Meeting called to order at 7 p.m. on October 19, 2019. We'll move into roll call. Advait. Alucard. Bender. Blair. Hahn. Crabb. Colbison. Dollinger. Fritz. Green. Anyang. Heasley. Johnson. Class. Klein. Clifford. Ludwig. Mass. Meredith. Mitchell. Rice. Rinchi. Rolling. Samanu. Strader. Searles. Stanley. Samuel. Tonet. Zastro. Khan. We'll move into Pledge of Allegiance led by Speaker Colbison. Moving on to programs for tonight, we do have Abby from Open Educational Resources. Would you want to approach the lectern and take it away?
So, hello everyone. This is my third time coming to speak to the student government here at Iowa State, but most of you are new, so that's exciting. I don't recognize almost any of you. So this will be news for some of you, and for some of you, it'll be updates from last year. So I'm Abby Elder. I'm the Open Access Librarian at Iowa State. I might have had a couple of you in my Library 160 classes. We'll see. And today I'm talking about open and affordable course content at ISU, the what, why, and for those of you who were here last year, where are we now? First, we're going to start with what's happening to make this a topic worth talking about. So you probably know that education is expensive by this point in time. If you've been here at least 1 year, you've noticed that. And part of that is because of the cost of education for students. Over the last 20 years, it's gone from most of your education is paid for by the state and a little bit's paid for by tuition to most of your tuition covers what you're doing and a little bit's covered by the state. That's even more expanded when you think about the cost of textbooks. So the cost of tuition is a big deal, but the cost of textbooks has gone up just as high. There's a lot of expenses you cover throughout your years. You have tuition fees, room and board, books and supplies, and they all add up and up and up and up every year. But there's one of those things that we can deal with right now, and that's the books and supplies specifically. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Now, like I said, it's not the biggest issue in the world. Books are not the biggest thing on your checklist. They're not the biggest thing that you're paying for, but they're an issue nonetheless, and they do affect a lot of students' ability to succeed in their courses. How does this affect you? Well, the cost of textbooks, a lot of students have come forward and talked to us about how it affects them personally on their day-to-day. We did an online survey last year asking for, hey, what's your story? How has the cost of textbooks affected you? And students have said they just avoid buying their books altogether. They go back and they share them with friends, or maybe they'll just go out and pirate the book online. I chose this one because it was a very long comment they put in of this whole narrative where they went out, they got their textbooks, it was $400 their first year, and then they swore never again. And they went out, grabbed their cutlass and boots, and took off to become a pirate, a textbook pirate, that is. They're very proud of it, but I think that being proud of it might be less good than if you think about the reason why this is an issue. There are alternatives to becoming a pirate and buying all your books. There are other things you can do as well. You can rent the book, you can share it and split the cost with your friends, you can borrow it from the library if we happen to have it, or your professor can make some different decisions as well. They can assign a cheaper textbook. They can assign an immediate access book. Some of you probably have books on Red Shelf that are immediate access. They can use an ebook that we have in the library and assign that, or they can use open educational resources, which are free for everybody. Now we're going to talk about immediate access and OER today. The Open and Affordable Education Committee on campus really works to push these two things because they're great options for you guys. Immediate Access is a program that goes through the bookstore and basically says, we're gonna work with the publishers to get the cheapest price we possibly can. Like, if you can get this book for $40, we will get it for $40. It's a bulk discount, but it does auto-charge people's accounts, and that's one of the reasons we like to go out and say, hey, just so you know, this is an opt-out process. You can opt out of it if you just don't have those $40 to spend, and it can even be as low as $10 for your class. But Immediate Access is great too because it saved students $2.2 million last year because it's something that's really easy professors to buy into. Oh, I'll just use the same book, but now it's cheaper. That's great. So there's a couple reasons why we say Immediate Access is a great option. It gives you access to your materials on the first day of class. You can keep using what you're used to. Your professor doesn't have to change pretty much anything. Faculty can negotiate for a cheaper cost, and you can opt out if you don't have that $30 to $40 you need to spend. But my favorite thing we work with is open educational resources, and I'm gonna talk about it a little bit more because it's a little bit more confusing. OER are free, openly licensed educational materials you can use in your class. They are free textbooks, they are free homework codes, they are free everything you could possibly need. And they also come with permissions for faculty to reuse and adapt the materials. So instead of assigning chapters 1, 3, and 6 in your class, they just give you chapters 1, 3, and 6, and you don't have to move around those chapters. They are educational resources, which can mean a lot of things. They're textbooks, assignments, test banks, homework software, workbooks, videos, lecture recordings. Anything that might be used in a class can be an OER, as long as it's free for you to access. And the reasons why we push for this in our committee is because A, you can access them anytime, not just from the first day of class. You can access them before class, after you graduate. It's always free for anyone, anywhere, and you can print them out if you want to. So it doesn't have to be just digital. Now, you can also use OER even if your professors do not assign them in a class. They're free for anyone, anywhere, so just look them up and it's free study materials. If you couldn't buy your calculus book this year, just look at a free one to figure out those concepts. And even though it's not the one that has your homework assignments, free stuff. So how do faculty find OER and why do we push for them use on campus? There's a couple of different ways. They can look up repositories where they're shared, see faculty reviews online, get help from a librarian, that's me, or publish something completely new. We do give grants to help faculty develop these materials as well. Some of the most popular ones are through OpenStax. If you take Astronomy 120, you have used this book in your class. It's completely free. You can use it on an app, online, or buy the physical copy in the bookstore. Biology, anatomy, chemistry, pretty much every general education 101 class, there's an OpenStax book for. And how does that affect you? So when people use OER, there's been a couple of studies done, and they've shown that when students have a class that uses OER, the grades get better, the drops, fails, and withdrawal rates go down, and that's especially prominent for Pell-eligible students. Why? Because those are the students that wouldn't have bought the book if they were assigned one that they couldn't afford. So everyone benefits, but the students in need benefit a lot. And this is where usually, when we get to the questions section, someone will say, why don't more people use these? What's going on? So I just put it in here so I can answer it up front. Faculty don't use OER for a lot of good reasons. One, some of them don't know about it. That's a good reason. I'm working on that. Two, there's not some available in some areas. So agriculture, architecture, vet med, and some of these more niche areas, they're just not gonna be as much available because these are books that are written and released specifically to be free. We're targeting those in need big classes first, and then we'll develop those other ones later on. And most of them are intro level too, those 101 classes. Now, I mentioned immediate access, I mentioned OER, I mentioned that I like both of them. It's not a versus thing. These are all great options, and our committee is trying to push them so that any sort of progress to make education more affordable for you guys is good progress. Even if it's just small, even if it's just a book, we're working on it. Now we're gonna talk a little bit about what you've accomplished. Like I said, this is my third year talking to you guys, and my third year here, so what have you done? In 2017, after I talked to you guys about OER, the student government put forward a resolution saying, we want more faculty to use free textbooks in their classes. We want more faculty to use OER, and we're just saying, this is what we support. You sent that off to the provost, you sent that off to the state government, and the provost came to me and said, what are we doing about this? The students are really interested in it. What can we do? And that's how we got some grant funding to develop more books on campus for this. In 2018, you put out a proclamation saying, thank you, faculty. We saw that you're using OER in your classes. That's really cool. And then the faculty came to me and said, the students thanked me. It's really nice. I'm really excited about this. Maybe I should tell my friends and tell the other faculty that they should work on this too. And this year, who knows? We might work on something else together. So the Open and Affordable Education Committee is a cross-campus partnership. It involves CELT, the library, the bookstore. Yes, the bookstore is working with us. We're working together, guys. The student government, you guys, and other partners. Sarah Moody is our main person on staff, and Austin was gonna be with us, but instead we've got your name. Yeah. He's gonna be with us moving forward as part of our committee as well. So you have a seat at the table. Our work involves talking to faculty, getting that awareness piece out there so they understand this is something you can do if you want to. We do workshops and events to teach people about this more, offer support. So I'll go out there, and if they say, I can't find a book, I don't think there one exists, I'll say, I'll go do it for you. I'll go look for it, I'll find it. I'm a librarian, I'm good at that. And then we also track OER use on campus to see who's doing this and how can we support what they're doing. So one way we do that is by promoting our OER trailblazers on our website. We show off little profiles saying, look at these people, they're so cool, I love them. Kathy Hilliard has been using American Yop in her American History 221 class for years and years now. She was one of our very first people working on this. Love her. Travis Chilcott gave me a picture of him wearing sunglasses for his profile, and I said, okay, because religious studies folks, what you gonna do? There's a lot of great people working on this right now, and we wanna highlight their work. And this year, there are over 20 courses reported using OER on campus. I couldn't even fit all their names on here. If you were here last year, it was big font, and there were like 9 people. That's all we had. And now 11 courses using OER on campus, including every section of Astronomy 120, every section of Math 201, and every section of Math 414. It's getting big. It's great. So like I said, we supported our grants through the help of you guys' proclamation and the provost support. These have funded more faculty projects on campus, including a textbook for NREM 240, which is a really fun math textbook for natural resources. I never thought I'd say that, but it's got the best opening line of, no one really likes math classes. And then it goes on to be a really good math textbook. Who knew? So where can we go from here? There's a couple of things I'd like to ask from you as student government. First, speak up. Go out and talk to more people about this on campus. A lot of students don't know that OER is something being used. They might not even know I'm using this free thing on in my class. I don't know what it is, but it's free, whatever. You can educate yourselves and others about these options and what's being used on campus and how you can advocate for them more. And you can speak out about why textbook affordability matters to you. Hashtag textbook broke is real big on Twitter. Lots of student governments are using it. You can also share your story. We're doing interviews now. Juan Bivoloni, the previous vice president, did an interview with us to talk about his experience with textbook costs, and we're taking it from all sides. So if you have a really nice story to share, hey, I had really cheap books, it was cool. If you have a really bad story to share, that's okay too. We just want to get your stories out there. And finally, recognize your instructor's work. The people that are working on this, making new books, assigning free books for class, are doing a lot of work to make it work in their classes. I just said the word work a lot of times. But they're doing a lot to do this, and we should support them and acknowledge that what they're doing is important. So thank you. You can visit our website at oer.iastate.edu. It's very easy to remember, or email me with questions, or you can ask more right now.
First of all, thank you. Could we have a round of applause? And questions, Senator Stanley.
Hi, thank you for coming in. I was here last year. I remember the proclamation and all of that. That was super great. My question is, do you have statistics, like a breakdown of OER usage among colleges? Because we have like college senators here, and we can target maybe colleges that aren't using OER so much, specifically by interacting with college senators and making sure that they're pushing this initiative.
So it depends. Some colleges are collecting this information, but if they're collecting the information by default, they're ahead of the curve because it means that they're paying attention and looking for it. Most of the time, what happens on colleges that don't have an official committee or an official initiative for OER is the faculty will be doing this and not thinking about it, and they don't tell anybody. So before we worked with the bookstore on this, it just said no book required when you had an OER in your class.
Senior Director of Academic Affairs, Moody.
Is it working? Cool. So thank you, Abby, for coming in and talking to us. So something that we've kind of been talking about that'd be really cool, I think, for probably student initiative. So anyone on that committee, I don't know if Senator Rowling is here. I don't see her. I'll talk to her later, but if anyone's interested, something that we've talked about doing is like doing a award for faculties, kind of like what we did last year. For those of you who were here, for those of you who weren't, we did kind of like a recognition thing for like faculty and staff that really stood out to us or that we had really good experiences with. And we're kind of thinking about doing something similar where we like specifically award professors that are doing a really good job about using affordable supplies and textbooks in their classroom. So that's just a little nugget to plant in y'all's brains if anyone's interested in, especially I think like student initiatives would probably be a good fit for that. I'd love to chat with you about that. But yeah, that was all. Thanks.
Do you yield? Senator Advait.
Hello. First of all, thank you so much for what you're doing. I think it's awesome, and I can't tell you how much I admire you right now. I was just wondering if you had put together like promotional resources that we could like hand out to professors and faculty to go from, you know.
Yeah, we have a couple of brochures we put out through the bookstore on immediate access, OER, and different affordable initiatives. I have some in my folder right now that I can give to you, physical copies, so yeah. And some on the website too.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. I yield.
Further questions for our speaker? Awesome. Thank you so much for coming here tonight
Thank
and
you.
sharing the information. I know a lot of senators did get some information to take it back to their colleges and resident halls and other places that they live. Thank you. Moving on to open forum. Open forum is an open discussion for issues relevant to students. Anyone wishing to speak may approach the lectern.
Howdy, everybody. I just want to give kind of a notice to all of you and give you guys a chance to ask questions. Long story short, we were kind of going through some of the binders, and we discovered a discrepancy from a couple years ago. It seems 2 positions in the cabinet were removed without any bylaw bills being sent through the Senate to actually remove them. It seems to have kind of been an error in relation to a referendum that we had a couple years ago that actually ended up failing. But yeah, so these treasurer and secretary positions are going to be added back into the bylaws. And I just want to let you guys know because in the next couple weeks, we're going to introduce some bills to kind of, I guess, correct this situation. So does anybody have any questions? No? Cool.
All right, seeing none, we'll move down to adopting tonight's agenda. Are there any changes or additions to tonight's agenda? Senator Class.
She did. I move to add Bill 2019-2-030F, funding women who design to the end of new business.
You said end of new business?
Yes.
There's been a motion to add 2019-2-30F, funding women who design to the bottom of new business, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the bill has been added. Senator Class.
I move to add Bill 2019-2-031F, funding Skydivers Club to the top of new business.
There's been a motion to add 2019-2-31F, funding Skydivers Club to the top of new business, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the bill has been added. Senator Class.
I move to strike Bill 2019-2-022F, funding Latinx student initiatives.
There's been a motion to strike 2019-2-22F, funding Latinx student initiatives from the agenda, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the bill has been struck. Senator Class. Senator Bender.
I move to table 2019-2018F, funding Asian Student Union for 1 week.
Second.
There's been a motion to table 2019-2-18F, funding Asian Student Union, and table it to next week.
Yeah.
And there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the bill has been tabled. Further motions, additions? There's been a motion to move to adopt tonight's agenda, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the agenda has been adopted. Moving down to approval of last week's minutes. Are there any changes to last week's meeting minutes? There's been a motion to adopt last week's meeting minutes, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the minutes has been adopted. Moving down to committee reports, starting off with Rules Committee with Madam Speaker.
Okay, hi everyone. Rules Committee met last Friday at 8 a.m. Oh my gosh. And we talked a lot about court reform. We split up into teams to work on different sections of that. So we'll be talking about those again this Friday and kind of what we came up with. And then we will have an amendment on allowing for the waiving of bylaws, which you'll see a little bit later in this meeting. So, yeah.
Questions for Madam Speaker? Seeing none, we move down to Finance Committee with Finance Director Mueller.
All right. Sorry I sent tonight's out a little late. The Mueller report, it was a little wonky this week. But we had a little meeting tonight for like 5 minutes before this meeting to see a bill that was going to be waived. So I just want to make the funding process very clear for everybody. If you're writing a funding bill, it has to be seen in Senate for first read, then to come to Finance Committee that next Tuesday for us to amend it. You have to be somebody representing the bill has to be physically present, so whether it is a member of student government or somebody from a student organization has to be present to explain the funding request, and then it comes to Senate again to be voted on. So make sure that you are, we really do not like waiving first read on funding bills specifically. So make sure that you are planning out your funding. Make sure you don't decide Monday that you want funding Thursday. That does not work. We're letting it slide this week because I think some people were confused. Also, if you have a funding bill, just let me know as soon as possible so we can make sure that you're on our agenda for Finance Committee. We know you're coming, you know when to come, and because somebody has to be present from the bill to talk about the bill. We can't just talk about it without somebody present, if that makes sense. Are there any questions on that process? I can also help you write funding bills. If you have questions, I can't author them, but if you ever need help, I have 4 awesome senators that would be willing to help you, or I always can. We had a lot of clubs last night. We had about a 2.5-hour meeting last night. So if you have any questions on why we sent things the way we did, be sure to ask. Thank you.
Questions for Finance Director Mueller? Seeing none, we move down to Student Initiatives Committee with Vice Chair Easley.
Caitlin was sick today, so she made me do my job and take over for her, so that's why I'm talking. We just had a pretty simple meeting, just went over some updates with the how the pop-up event is going. We're working with Johnny to get those, get the times and areas approved for the last week in October. And then we welcomed our newest at-large, Laura, and we'll be seeing her next week. She'll be on the agenda, whatever, for next week. And then just some other updates with projects and whatever. So, yeah.
Questions for Vice Chair Eastley? Seeing none, we move down to PR committee with President Graber.
I got the update for PR. So Johnny said that Public Relations Committee will be meeting soon. They're trying to find a time that meets for everyone. But on a side note related to public relations, Senator Meredith will now be leading the social media charge. So if you have anything that you need to be posted, let Senator Meredith know. In her speech about why she should be on the PR committee, she talked about how savvy she is with social media, so let her know.
Questions? Seeing none, we move down to diversity and inclusion with President Graber.
Got this as well. So both of the senators on diversity and inclusion are sick, so that's why I'm giving this update. But we had Raya RBC, our student wellness director, come in to talk with the committee about how to move forward with our menstrual hygiene project. We're going to partner with student health and wellness on how to move forward with this and start standing committee members to the newly formed committee with student health and wellness to problem solve and set a more concrete plan. This update's from Elena, by the way, not me. That's why I'm reading. And then we ran into an issue with how to get the flag project moving forward since we cannot put it on the registrar since applications for May graduation have already been sent out. We are now looking at partnering with the senior class council and are trying to figure out how to get the word out for this. And then moving forward with Heroes Week, Senator Klein and Senator Simal have really been taking charge and getting more involved on how we are going to plan this all out. And we plan on partnering with the ISU Daily, but also highlighting it on the StuGov website. As always, if you have any questions or issues, let those senators know or Director Hoffman as well.
Questions? Seeing none, we move down to civic engagement with our awesome Senator Tonet.
Thank you, Vice President Bhatia. That means a lot. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. The subtweet from the finance director was about me. You will be seeing a bill from Civic Engagement about funding an event for next week. They were taking a while to get numbers to me, so that's why there was a little bit of a delay on that one. We're still trying to iron out our committee meeting time. We had a meeting last week, but it was a little sparse in attendance, so we're trying to figure that out. And then, yeah, I guess with the bill, mock caucus event is next Thursday. It's going to be pretty awesome. So, yeah.
Questions for our awesome Senator Tonet? All right, seeing none, we move down to comments from the executive branch with President Graber.
Am I the awesome president? No, I'm not. Okay, that's cool. So I got 3 updates. So the Special Student Fees Committee is meeting tomorrow morning. If you have any questions or any concerns regarding the special fee, contact Senator Stanley, Vice President Bhatia, myself, or Finance Director Mueller, as we all serve on that committee. Last week, Vice President Bhatia, ex officio to the Ames City Council, Devin Leeson, and myself sat down with Mayor Hala to talk about issues that affect both students and the city of Ames. One of the cool things that was highlighted was the council's and Mayor Hala's agenda on diversity and inclusion within the city of Ames. So if you have any initiative ideas or any projects that you'd like to bring up to the city of Ames, he's all for that. We do have our joint meeting with the city of Ames October 23rd, so be on the lookout for that, and that's a topic that he wants to discuss as well. And then we filmed our fireside chat, again, our second one, with the Assistant Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion and Equal Opportunity and Title IX Coordinator. What a great title. Margot Foreman, who's the Office of Equal Opportunity. We learned about what the office provides to students, what initiatives the office is doing, and how student government can help out with the office as well. As always, Fireside Fridays, so look out for that on social media with Senator Meredith. Any questions?
Questions for President Graber? Vice Speaker Schrader.
If my computer wasn't broadcast to the screen, I'd just send you an email. But is there any way for the fee committee to communicate with this body after decisions are made? Since this is one of the most consequential things that student government has to deal with, is after you make decisions, could you explain maybe a process of why that decision was made? And especially since we all go to constituency councils, it might be nice for us to be able to report that of like, here's why your fees are going up, or maybe they're going down. I'd be really happy, but let's do that.
I think Senator Stanley wanted to answer that, so I'll let him go first.
Yeah, I mean, as a Senate representative, I would love to give an update after, they're usually on Thursdays, Tuesday or Thursday. So if it's on a Tuesday, the Senate meeting the day after. If it's on a Thursday, the Senate meeting the week after, and just give you an update, give you all an update on how things are going, where we're at, and our rationale on the decisions that we're making.
I would appreciate it. Thank you.
So we did have one meeting already, and we listened to Cyride, Board of Trustees Schrader, and Cyride talk about the Cyride fee, and then we also had the Memorial Union Director Steve Winfrey also come in and talk about the Memorial Union fee as well. So they come into these meetings, they talk about their fee and what the fee is going toward, and how changes might occur. A big issue this year has been enrollment since it's decreasing. How does that affect the student fee in that aspect?
Questions? All right, seeing none, we move down to external matters. Within external matters, general orders 2019-2-19F, funding Brock and Bridle with Senator Zastrow.
Howdy, y'all. So this is a bill where I don't know who's. Yep, you can go up to the podium. So this is a bill for Block and Bridle, and I'll let you explain what's going on with that.
Yeah, so this is our annual philanthropy event where we will package meals for homeless and people that are in need of good nutrients and stuff like that. So we take student volunteers and we work with an outside company called Meals from the Heartland. They bring in the ingredients and then we take student volunteers to package the meals. And our goal this year is 50,000 meals.
Awesome. And could you speak a little bit as to why you're requesting this money when you normally don't?
Yes, so in past years, we do work with outside companies to be sponsors, and from this year, one of our title sponsors that normally sponsors the event did pull their sponsorship a few weeks before the event, so that's why we reached out to student government.
Thank you. And then lastly, I'll yield in a second, but I would like to note Finance Committee did send this unfavorably on the grounds that in PNC it specifically states that we do not fund non-ethnic food items. And because the meal kits are composed of non-ethnic food items, we determined that it did violate PNC. I would encourage you all to discuss that further, and I'll yield.
Further questions? Motions? Questions, motions? Senator Dett.
May I address Finance Director Mueller?
Yes.
Okay. Director Mueller, did you have any concerns about the precedents this was going to set? Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so this one was a weird one. They are classified as sponsored, so they technically do not follow PNC. We, in the past couple years, have still followed the funding ineligible criteria, just that section, and imposed that on organizations. Why? I couldn't really tell you. That's not like necessarily a written rule. It's just what we've used to fund, because once you open the door to, like, if you do start funding ineligible items to sponsored orgs, that could get a little messy if we wanted to fund it. I do think that this is like a pretty decent thing to fund, so I would not be completely opposed to funding it. It is just definitely kind of opening a door. So they are sponsored, though they're not funding eligible. If they were funding eligible, I'd say no, not at all. But we have funded not fundraising, but we have funded like Project Linus. We've funded Fleece for that in the past. This is a little bit different because it is food, so take that as you will.
Thank you. I yield.
Senator in-chief.
Permission to address the floor and the speaker.
Yes, you may.
So just to talk a little bit about Block and Bridle. So Block and Bridle is the largest student organization that we have here on campus, and especially within the College of Agriculture. And they're a very mission-focused group, providing a lot of really good opportunities, not only for their own students to grow, but I would like to invite you to think about this food in a different way. So this may not be ethnic food, but this is food that's going towards something that's very, very beneficial for our community. So this is us actually just going out of the way to support. I've worked with Meals for the Heartland before and many other organizations, and they're a fantastic, efficient, down-to-earth group that's really just looking to try and put food in the hands of the people who cannot afford it. Block and Bridle has done a lot for our college. We're very proud to have them in our college. And it's very unfortunate what's happened with some of their sponsorships over this year, and that if we have this opportunity to do something for our community and for our club, for a club that's for all of us on campus, not even just the people in ag, I think this is something that, even though it may not be precisely what PNC does. It does demonstrate the values that we have as Iowa State University and as student government. I yield.
Senator Ludwig.
May I address the speaker?
Yes, you may.
Hi, I just want to ask real quick. I noticed that the cost is 10 cents a unit. Is like the whole meal kit worth 10 cents, or are we like paying for packaging, or what is that?
So each meal is considered 10 cents, and that includes like all the actual food and the packaging that it will go in.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I was curious about that. I yield.
Senator Han Young.
Question for Finance Director Mueller.
Yes.
Is the PNC requirement for not funding non-ethnic food only a rule for food consumed by the group, or does it also apply for food that is given out of the group to a charitable organization?
There's not a specific thing that says it's consumed by the group, but I would say either. I don't think we would fund people buying food and then just giving it to other people, because usually all the events that we fund all the food events have to be open to the public. So like say Korean Student Association is asking for food for an event, it has to be open to all students. So sometimes the members of the club aren't eating that food, it's just for people from the community that come eat it. So I would say both.
Okay, and then question for the speaker then. I've previously done meals from the Heartland, and are you going to just package the meals and then they go through Meals to the Heartland to be distributed to people outside of the university, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So just kind of echoing what Senator Rienzi then said, since it is going out, it's almost like it's more of a charitable giving instead of eating the food, but I understand this hasn't been really covered in Senate before, so I'd like to hear some more discussion on it before we kind of make a decision. I yield.
Senator Stanley. Senator Class.
So just, you might hear me say this twice tonight, but why we sent this unfavorably and why we send things is because they don't follow the rules of PNC or don't follow the precedent that has been set in either annual allocations or special allocations the previous fiscal year. That does not mean that Finance Committee does not like Meals for the Heartland. Doesn't mean that we don't want to give money for things to go to charity. It's just we have a governing document that we have to apply to every single club that comes through. And so giving leeway to some and not to others makes it difficult. So we have to follow our governing document and the precedent that we set. And that is all I have for now. I yield.
Senator Stanley.
Yeah, oh boy, I let too close to my mouth. I don't think anyone is necessarily attacking Finance Committee for sending this unfavorably. I certainly understand, and I think we all do, why they send this unfavorably, because as PNC stands, it violates PNC, the terms as they currently stand on the page. But I think the reason that requests like this still come to Senate, even though they do violate PNC, is so that we can apply maybe some common sense determinations and determine for ourselves whether some causes that may be worthy of perhaps coloring outside the line, stepping outside the box a little bit, should be funded. So I see other placards up. All right, I'll call to question then.
There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote. Advait. Olicard. Bender. Blair. Hahn. Crabb. Culbertson. Dollinger. Fritz. Green. Hanyang. Heasley. Johnson. Class. Klein. Lipford. Ludwig. Mass. Meredith. Rice. Rinchy. Schrader. Searles. Stanley. Tonet. Zastro. Klein. Hanyang. All the card. With a vote of 19 to 4 to 1, this funding request passes. Moving on to 2019.
Point of information, wouldn't that fail? 2/3 of seated senators is 21.
Oh, yeah. Yep, thanks, Vice Speaker Schrader, for noticing that. That actually fails. Yes.
I'd like to move to reconsider the vote. I was on the prevailing side.
I'll move to reconsider.
There's been a motion to reconsider the vote, and there's been a second. Is there any objection? There's been an objection. Senator, do you take it back? No. We move into discussion whether we should move into reconsider the vote or not, and that's with Vice Speaker Schrader.
I voted no because I think the precedent of not funding ineligible items is decent to keep. Because of the amount of senators we had sick today, that means that 4 no votes and an abstention was a fail. I understand that many senators probably don't like that, but that is the importance of being here. I kind of wanted to take a little bit more time, which is why I moved to reconsider, but I will be voting against moving to reconsider. I think we kind of all understood the issue. If you were a no and you would like to change to a yes, I think you should mention that, as that would be a valid reason to move back into reconsidering. Otherwise, I think the issue has been discussed, and with that, I yield.
Senator Hanyang.
I'd just like to point out that Senator Alucard was in the bathroom when we were taking the vote, so she's our one extension. Don't know if that changes the vote count at all, but I would like to reconsider it just based on the fact that she probably would like to vote for this. I yield.
Further questions? Motions? There's been a call to question on the bill? Yeah. Do you withdraw? Do you withdraw, sorry? Because you objected.
No.
Do you take it back?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, we'll move into, there's been a call to question and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Yes. Yes or no? I was going to explain that. So the yeses means that we'll move to reconsider the vote, so that means we move directly into voting. And for no means that the bill fails and then we move to the next bill. Does that make sense to everyone? Yes, we move to discussion. Yes. Majority of seated present senators right now. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. Senators who want to move back into discussion of this bill, please raise their placards. There's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move back into discussion of the bill. And it was Senator Stanley.
Yeah, I would like to urge the people who voted no on this bill to consider the extenuating circumstances of the moment. I am not sure why we have so many senators who are absent today, but there are certainly extenuating circumstances here, and I would urge you to keep those in mind as you're debating. As you're debating whether or not to vote no on this bill. With that, I'll yield for the time being.
Senator Meredith.
I just had a question for you. After your sponsor fell through, did you look into any other people who might be able to sponsor you, or was your next move just automatically to come to student government?
No, we reached out to a couple different companies and then just a couple different like grant and funding things, like on campus and stuff like that. And then we came to student government.
I have one more question. Can I still ask it? Okay. Do you have any plans to get a new sponsor for next year? And do you think that that would be successful? So I do anticipate only having to ask for this once.
Yes, our club is making changes to like all sponsorship of all events that we put on, so we definitely plan to this kind of be like a one-time thing.
Senator Zastro.
Yeah, so I think this is kind of what Senator Meredith was getting at. This is a very rare circumstance. This is not a club whose, treasurer last year was really bad, and so they missed allocations, and now they're coming back to us. This is something where a sponsor pulled out. They tried to get other avenues of funding. Now they're coming to us. First of all, I'd like to say, Senator Rinchie, you were kind of waving around. Is there something you'd like to say briefly?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on Block and Bridle reaching out for sponsors. So I sit as sponsorship chair for the College of Ag and Life Sciences Student Council, and they have been coming in having lots of in-depth discussions about how they can go forward with this. They're very, very forward-thinking and trying to build up those new sponsorships so this doesn't become a reoccurring thing. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Finance Director Mueller, you were waving around your hand. Is there something you'd like to say?
When do you package all the meals?
So we actually, for this year, already did it on September 30th. But like I filled out the application beforehand.
Did you already pay for all the meals?
No.
Okay. Never mind. I thought this could be events account, but now I don't know. It's possible that this could be special projects, but it's still bound by PNC. Also, I would ask you guys to maybe reconsider doing it from special projects because of the dollar amount if you do want to pass this. Just looking at how much money we have left in Senate discretionary versus special projects, I think this could be better under a special project, but that's totally up to you all as well.
Finance Director Mueller, would you like to comment on what the difference would be between something coming out of Senate discretionary versus special projects?
So we probably should have talked about this more last night. We had a lot to see, but like Senate discretionary, I think is more normal functioning of a club, like a conference or a competition or printing or normal function of clubs that all clubs do. This, I think we could argue, is not something that like every club would do normally, so it could be a project that's special. Special projects is bound by PNC though, so the same argument goes there. I'm just saying the dollar amount, since we re-entered this bill, is worth thinking about.
All right, thank you, I'll yield.
Senator Stanley.
If I'm understanding this right, Finance Director Mueller, is it your opinion that we should fund this out of special projects?
I'm saying if you want to fund it, special projects would be a better option than Senate discretionary. The reason I asked about the events is because events account is not bound by PNC. So I was thinking if this is like a thing where everybody gets together and packages them one day as an event, that might be a way, honestly, around PNC. But it sounds like that event is kind of over, so it's not really something that we can fund an event in the future.
Okay, well then, to start off, I will move to amend the account from Senate discretionary to special projects.
There's been a motion to amend the bill to switch the accounts from Senate discretionary to events, special projects. And there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a discussion. Senator Stanley. There's been a call to question on the amendment. There's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote. There's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the amendment by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment stands approved. Senator Stanley.
I'd just like to comment that the bill actually did pass the first time. It is 2/3 of present senators, so with that in mind, I'll call to question immediately.
There's been a call to question, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote. Senator Dvitt. Yes. Olacart. Yes. Bender. Yes. Blair. Yes. Khan. Yes. Crabb. Yes. Culbertson. Yes. Dollinger. Yes. Fritz. Green. Hanyang. Heasley. Johnson. Class. Klein. Lifford. Ludwig. Meredith. Rinchi. Strader. Searles. Stanley. Tonette. Zastro. Fritt. Dollinger. With a vote of 20 to 4 to 0, this funding request passes. Moving on to 2019-2-20F, funding Korean Student Association with Senator Bender.
I propose the amendments from Finance Committee.
There's been a motion to amend the bill and adopt the amendments proposed by the Finance Committee meetings, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into discussion. Senator Bender.
I'm actually going to give my time to the president right now to talk about why he's looking for funding. Or
It's the discussion of the amendment.
discuss it. Call to question, sorry.
There's been a call to question on the amendment. There's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote. And there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the amendments by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment stands approved. Senator Bender.
Now, would you like to explain why you're looking for funding?
Sure. Our club is joining International Food Fair Night held by ISC, happening this November 9th. And we are requesting for a fund that needs for ingredients for the food that we're going to make. And that's the list of the chart.
Senator Yield. Senator Hanyang.
Yeah, question for Finance Committee. What was the reasoning behind eliminating the individual line items and combining it into food ingredients? Senator Klaus.
So the bill, as we got it, was not the same bill that they were presenting. Difference in the incognito form to there. So we moved this to, we just reconciled it with what they were asking for and kind of consolidated it because it's all going to be under one grocery list. So that's why it's food ingredients and not separated out by dish.
Cool. I yield.
Further questions? Motions? There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote. Senator Advet. Yes. Alucard. Yes. Bender. Yes. Blair. Khan. Yes. Crabb. Yes. Culbertson. Yes. Dollinger. Yes. Fritz. Yes. Green. Yes. Anyang. Yes. Heasley. Yes. Johnson. Yes. Class. Yes. Klein. Yes. Lifford. Yes. Ludwig. Yes. Meredith. Yes. Rinchi. Yes. Schrader. Yes. Searles. Yes. Stanley. Yes. Tonette. Yes. Zastro. Yes. Blair. With a vote of 23 to 0 to 1, this funding request passes. Moving on to 2019-2-21F, funding the Iranian Students and Scholars Association with Senator Zastro.
Howdy, y'all. So this is another bill. This is funding for the Iranian Students and Scholars Association. If the representative for that group would like to approach the podium, thank you. First of all, a motion to approve the Finance Committee's amendments.
There's been a motion to move to adopt Finance Committee's amendments, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into discussion of the amendment. There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Call to question on the amendment, sorry. Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote, and there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the amendments by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment stands approved. Senator Zast.
Thank you. So the way that we changed this bill, just from its initial form, We took off flowers because we don't fund those, also disposable dishes, our capital item, the venue we can't fund because we don't fund venues, so that left us with the traditional Iranian food. And the half-sin, we ended up not funding the half-sin, but I think that's something that we could have more discussion on tonight. And with that, I'll let you talk a little bit about what this event is.
Yeah, hello everyone. Opposite to Abby, this is my first time presenting in a student organization in Senate, and it's very exciting. I wanted to thank you all first to giving us this opportunity to talk about our student organization plans and challenges that we have. The matter of showing up here is just talking about one of the items in our funding proposal that is not approved, but I would like to take the advantage of being here and talk more about the plans that we always had in mind and is a part of our organization aim, but we never had a chance to work on them because of financial issues and all of the stuff. ISSA is a student organization that mainly is established for bringing Iranian students and scholars together, and also whoever is interested in Persian culture, literature, and history. As you might know, Iran, or land of Persia, has about 7,000 years of history, a rich source of literature, and we would love to share those cultures and literature with international friends, but for some difficulties, the only thing that we worked on in past few years was just sticking to that, bringing Persian students together. Can we move to the next slide? As a part of the organization roles, we hold about 6 main events that we had opportunity to have funds from student government for only the first one, which is our New Year, Nowruz. And we have a few more traditions, main important events that we never had chance to have funding, and we usually hold them as potlucks, or we pay out of our pocket or find some sponsors who are volunteer to help us. If we can talk a little bit more about Nowruz, I appreciate it. Yeah, Nowruz, which that means new day, is basically the day that sun crosses the vernal equinox, and just wanted to say that most of our events and cultures has a rich history and science behind, and for us, Nowruz, as the first day of the spring, is the day that Earth get a rebirth from a dead winter, which is really dead winter here in Iowa at least. And as a part of this historical event in New Year, we set up a table. It's called Half Seen, which the reason that we're here is that it is considered as decoration or memorial, which I'm trying to provide more information that it doesn't have anything with memorial or decoration. Half Seen is mainly a table of 7 elements that each represent some value of creation and immortals that protect that creation. And the 7 goes back to 7 days of creation. I have a very short video I wanted to share with you about the items are in that table and what, this here, yeah. This is a YouTube video if we can have it. It's a 2 minutes video. If you click on the, oops. Yeah.
About a minute. just have to yield to the floor so that I can call someone out. Senator Searles.
If we are running out of time, I can say some of those elements. Okay, can we have the video?
We're working on sound, so if you would like to talk about other things in the meantime.
We don't need the
There's no sound?
sounds. Yeah, there is a transcript that we can use, but basically these elements all are representative of some values. Like Apple is standing for health, or we have Persian olive that stands for. Okay, seems we have it. Yeah, that's it. Okay.
Do you have anything to add to that?
I would like to talk a little bit about the plans we have for ISSA as a part of our objective, but this is I guess, the last slide. Can you come back? Yeah, there it is. As I mentioned, we have a very rich source of literature, and we would love to share that with our international friends. And also, we have many scientists here in United States that we do not have chance to invite them here in Iowa State, because Iowa is almost in middle of the U.S. and there's not that much. It's not easy to travel here, and we do not have enough funding to cover the costs. And also we have so many ideas about just sharing the cultures and science and everything behind our literature. But all of those things require supports, and yeah, just it.
Senator Searles, you have 20 seconds.
20 seconds.
I yield.
Senator Class. Senator Bender.
I just had like a quick question. So what exact items? We just need like
Okay.
the exact, like, what were you looking to be funded?
Some of the items of half-cents, as you saw, are fresh items that we need to purchase, and we also need some ornaments to just present them more beautiful. And the way we do it right now is just we borrow all the items from the community members, we gather everything and set up, and then we return them. But that would be great if we had opportunity to have ISSA own ornaments for half-scene, and we would love to set up multiple half-scenes across the campus, because this is not just a Persian culture. This is something, some information about the life, about the Earth's rebirth every spring, and it would be a great opportunity if we could do that.
Just like one question, and then so like to fund it, we would just need those like items. Like what were those items that you were?
I can provide a list of items if that helps.
To yield my time then.
Center in class.
All right. So we had this discussion kind of a little bit yesterday, obviously. Finance committee's perspective of it was that it was along the lines of like some of the things we saw in the video were flowers, which we obviously can't fund, which we didn't fund other places, but then they also are on the half-cin, so we wouldn't be able to fund that. Some other items that just came up in the like the YouTube video we watched and doing just like a little bit of research is like vinegar, fruit, sprouts, apple pudding. Those aren't, I mean, like an apple isn't, apple is not a non-traditional food, so that again falls under our funding and eligible expenditures. And like then also asking for things that we can use over and over is asking for capital items, which also are funding and eligible items according to our governing document. We again kind of talked about this yesterday, but just keep saying it for the Senate, I guess. So yeah, I guess that wasn't really a question to you, I'm sorry, but it was more just facts of our discussion in Finance Committee yesterday and like kind of our reasoning why we amended it to zero fund the half-cin. I yield.
Senator Stanley.
Great. So it was briefly mentioned that we had this discussion last year, and I am currently looking at the minutes from our discussion on this topic last year with the half-cin as well. Finance Director Carter's opinion was that the half-cin is a memorial, which at the time of our meeting last year, January 23rd, 2019, was funding and eligible for 2 years. Then Speaker Cody Woodruff said that the previous year, so that would have been 2 years ago now, they did not fund the half-cin when the bill came to Senate, but that it looks like it was funded during annual allocations. So it would appear that our precedent is that we cannot fund it on the floor, but we can fund it during annuals. Is that incorrect, Finance Director Mueller?
I'm looking at it as each individual item, and looking at the items themselves, they are funding ineligible. Like whether it's a traditional, whether it's tradition or a memorial, the physical items themselves are funding ineligible. So I think we need to stop looking at the overarching half-cin, because they're not going on Amazon and buying a half-cin. They're going to the store to buy items that are going on a table that do represent a half-cin, but that's not what you're gonna see when you get a receipt. So the items on the table are funding ineligible. If they wanted to, if there were traditional food items on that table, that's why they have $8 a plate. They could use some of that funding from the traditional food to fund traditional food items that they want to put on that table. That would be fine.
Okay, I can certainly see the merits to that argument, and I can also see the flip side, that the context of what you're using the items for is equally as important. But I think that either of those arguments are moot, because the precedent appears to be that we do not fund this on the floor during Senate. Whether it can be funded during annuals is a discussion that Finance Committee at the time can have, and I know that I just pushed for us to not waive, but overlook some guidelines in PNC. I think this is a different scenario because this is not nearly as apparent of a, I shouldn't say that. There's a lot of precedent here at play that I think should be respected and that I think should be upheld. So I see placards up, so I'll yield for now.
Senator Zastro.
Aside from the half-sin, which yesterday in Finance Committee I did vote that the half-sin should be on the document as funded by student government sent here. Looking at it now, I understand that I'm seeing it from the same perspective that Finance Director Mueller is addressing it, where it's not necessarily one collective thing that will be labeled as a decoration or memorial, but instead it's a collection of things, each of which individually can be funded. So I've changed my mind on that. But looking through the other bills that we're funding tonight, just coming from the Senate discretionary account, this bill is $2,500. There's also a bill for about $5,000. There's a bill for $400 that we've already passed. There's so Finance Director Mueller, could you give us a little bit of intel, perhaps, on how much is left in the Senate discretionary and how we should plan our spending in general?
I would say after tonight, if everything goes through, we'll have about 20-ish thousand left in that account. Granted, we have seen this, we will hopefully not ever have this many clubs at one time come through. We are front-loaded for the year, but it is like not even a quarter through the year, so that's something to think about. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, so an option that we have, options that we have for all bills is we can say, yes, we should fund the full $2,500 of this event. And that's not to say that this event doesn't have merits, that this is great, but we do have a finite amount of money, so we could also say we'll fund half of this or 2/3 of this, and that's up to the discretion of the Senate. That would be an amendment on the bill. And I think that's something that we should discuss because we only have $40,000 in that account for the entire year. And we're burning through that pretty quickly. Like Finance Director Mueller said, we are getting more now than we will be getting through the rest of the year, but please just keep that in consideration. I'll yield.
Senator Searles. Senator Rinchi.
I was going to move to amend the motion by striking 3,500 in the enacted and changing that to the 2,560, which is there at the bottom. Yeah, and then point of question, like, I don't know what point I want to make, but like, could this then be a spot for discussion for everyone to kind of talk about how much we should fund it?
Could you repeat that?
I object to it being friendly.
Yes, actually.
The total's still the same. It doesn't change. The club is funding it. The total amount of money being spent is the same. Isn't it?
Yes, but it's the transferred from our account.
This one up top? Okay.
That could be friendly too. I yield.
Senator Advet. Senator Han Young.
Question for the speaker. Can you explain a bit why you were unable to attend annual allocations during the last year?
Pardon, please?
Why were you unable to attend annual allocations during the last year?
I guess the board has some issues with substituting the treasurer, and maybe they missed that annual allocation. This is my guess.
Okay. Then to follow up, does your treasurer plan on attending annual allocations during the next year?
Yes, we do.
Okay. It seems like it's pretty important given that that half-sin item is something that would potentially be funded during annual allocations then. Going back to what Senator Zastros did say about the amount of money in the Senate discretionary account, it's important that we do have some sort of kind of discretion on it, on what we are funding and not, but keep in mind that that sometimes does leave room for bias and what we would want to fund or not. So I am currently,
Actually, I'll yield.
Senator Searles.
Okay, so I know I'm not on Finance Committee and new, so I don't know too much about PNC, even though I've read it briefly a long time ago. We talked about funding individual items as a whole, looking at it individually. Does that apply to when we fund office supplies for ourselves?
Who do you have the question directed
Senator
to?
Zastra.
Office supplies are a line item in themselves. We have that specified in PNC.
Okay.
So if you say we're funding office supplies, you can just give the accounting office just a receipt from Staples, and we'll know that they'll look over what you bought, and if it's office supplies, it's fine. Same thing for the Korean Student Associations, which we funded earlier. Just various like food supplies. That's how that was denoted to. But those are specific line items where the accounting office is able to understand that all these things apply under this line item. And I see Senator Klass's.
Sure. Senator Klass, could you expand upon that?
Just so in PNC, there's like a specified section about office supplies, and it's that organizations are eligible for $60 per fiscal year for office supplies.
Okay.
So it's in PNC
Sure,
is okay.
I wasn't aware, so thank you for the clarification. Also, I just want to, I'm reading the minutes of the meeting last night. It says that we can't fund anything that can be used more than once. Finance Director Mueller, do you have a comment on that?
That's not true. That was us trying, came across, Treasurer Doherty said that and then was like, I didn't mean like that as it came across. But capital items, we say that we don't fund capital items, which usually we say are we describe it as something that you could use for more than a year. That doesn't mean that things that are used less than a year we can fund. That's just the definition of a capital item as something that is an asset. So I guess, yeah, think about something like an office supply is not an asset, a desk is an asset. So that's just the way that we differentiate those two things.
Okay, thank you. Finally, I just want to caution us on our definitions and usage, and maybe there's definitions somewhere, but saying ethnic foods, specifying ethnic foods, because if you look at the definition, it's just relating to large groups of people. This is from the dictionary, of or relating to large groups of people classed according to common racial, national, tribal, religious, linguistic, or cultural origin or background. An apple, though it may be common to us, can still relate to multiple classes and still be classified in the tradition as an ethnic. Senator Zastra, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I have this pulled up here. So I'm just reading PNC. International/ethnic food. Requests for international/ethnic food for events will be considered only if open to the public and will be limited to one per year. Ethnic foods must be specifically served at events with the primary purpose of promoting culture. And so all this is true, but also we are already giving them the $8 maximum for ethnic food that a club can request per year per expected attendee. So if we were to add an apple to the line item, and this is pretty nitty gritty, but that would exceed the $8 then. So,
right.
Yeah.
So if we're, and I'm going to yield here in a second, and for future debates, I think it's important, and for this one as well, moving forward, is relevant. If we're viewing them as individual items and we're viewing them as ethnic foods, but we've already reached the cap, and so we're viewing them as a different object, then I feel like we should classify that in our head as not, an apple not being an ethnic food because I've already reached a cap on ethnic foods. Does that make sense? We should keep in mind what the intent and the impact of the display will be, or the half-sin will be. It's obviously very important, and doing just a tiny bit of research, it shows that. So keeping that classification in mind is going to be important moving forward in this debate and in further debates. With that, I will yield.
Senator Alucard.
I guess I sort of have a question for either Finance Committee or Finance Director Mueller. So a couple weeks ago when we funded repairs on a boat for the rowing club, is that not a capital item that then we were funding? Or can someone just explain, whoever wants
Could you
to?
direct the question to
Senator
Senator?
Klass.
So why we were able to fund repairs on the capital item is because in PNC we can fund repairs for items that student government has funded. So we partially funded the boat and the original purchase, therefore we are allowed to fund repairs to that boat.
But it's not like we only repaired the part we funded. We repaired the whole boat, right? So there's leeway.
That was the gray area and why we sent it no bias.
Okay, I understand. I yield.
There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Senator Rinchi.
Just kind of on the same note as the boat there, then when student government helped fund that boat, was that boat then viewed as a capital item, or was there a different law in place at that time? If someone would know, I would gladly. So when student government helped to fund the boat whenever they helped fund it the first time, and then we just funded the repairs for it, would that have been a capital item at the time that it was purchased?
Yeah, PNC changes every year, so it could have been allowed that year if they're sponsored at the time. We change funding, we reclassify every group every year, so the group could have been classified as sponsored at the time, then they would have been eligible for capital items. There are a lot of different reasons why they could have been funded for that in the first place.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I call the question.
There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote. Senator Advet. Yes. Olcott. Yes. Bender. Yes. Blair. Yes. Khan. Yes. Crabb. Yes. Corbison. Yes. Dollinger. Yes. Fritz. Yes. Green. Yes. Hanyang. Yes. Heasley. Yes. Johnson. Yes. Class. Yes. Klein. Yes. Lifford. Yes. Ludwig. Yes. Meredith. Rinchi. Schrader. Searles. Stanley. Tonette. Zastro. With a vote of 24 to 0, this funding request passes. There's been a quorum call. Y'all know the drill. Advet. Olcott. Bender. Blair. Khan. Crabb. Colbison. Dollinger. Fritz. Green. Hanyang. Heasley. Johnson. Class. Klein. Lifford. Ludwig. Mass. Meredith. Mitchell. Rice. Rinchi. Rolling. Simanu. Schrader. Searles. Stanley. Samuel. Tonette. Zastro. Khan. We do have quorum. Moving on to 2019-2-23F, funding Sparkle Squad with Senator Searles.
Yeah, if you want to go on up there. So this is Sparkle Squad, or representations for representatives for Sparkle Squad. Talked about this last week a little bit. Move to approve the amendments from Finance Committee.
There's been a motion to approve the amendments proposed by the Finance Committee, and there's been a second. We move into discussion. Senator Searles.
Call the question.
There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's a call to question on the amendment, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote.
PSC.
There's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the amendments by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment stands approved. Senator Searles.
Okay, I'm just going to yield my time to the speakers if they would like to give some background to the group and what you're asking for.
Yeah, so we are a part of the Iowa State Sparkle Squad, which is an all-inclusive cheer and dance team that has half of our members are Iowa State students and the other half are members from the community that have any form of differing abilities. So we perform at different Iowa State events all throughout the year, and the nationwide organization that we are a part of requires us to have uniforms for those events. Our uniforms cost $200 a piece, and we are in need of 14 new uniforms this year. So that is essentially what we're needing funding for. The initial grant that was discussed last night was the Excellence Grant, which I was thinking about it, and I don't actually remember specifically applying for that. I just remember saying that we had received that in the past. So yeah, if you guys wanted to give us anything, we'd be open to whatever, whether or not that's the excellence grant. So.
Senator Class.
So, notwithstanding what's conversations possibly happening, yesterday we saw this in Finance Committee for going through the Excellence Fund. If you remember a few weeks ago, we passed the criteria for the Excellence Fund, which I will read now as 1, raise the university's profile or prestige, 2, promote diversity, inclusion, equality, social justice, or address other issues of campus climate, 3, have a positive impact on the student experience or broad segment of the campus population, 4, funds from this account must not be a recurring event or ask, 5, the request is ineligible for funding through another account, 6, requests must meet all criteria in order to be eligible for funding. Those last 3 are the new funding that we passed as additions to the bylaws. So yesterday in Finance Committee, we did vote to send this unfavorably to Senate because Sparkle Squad, however awesome we think it is, and we truly think it's awesome, this was an ask that they had 2 years ago, and therefore, by terms of reoccurring, this does not meet the 4th criteria, and therefore does not meet the 6th criteria of Excellence Fund. So we voted to send it unfavorably. I'm going to yield because I think a conversation happened that will provide more insight.
Senator Rinchi.
Before we get into that discussion, I want to quick throw a friendly in to change the 5,000, to amend the motion by changing 5,000 to 2,000.
Senator Schultz, do you accept as a friendly?
Awesome. I yield.
Senator Ludwig. Senator Heasley.
Permission to address the speaker?
Yes, you may.
So I noticed that your organization isn't paying for anything. I was just wondering why that is.
We have a fundraiser set up to sell T-shirts this year, and we're planning to reach out to different businesses as well to see if they'd be willing to sponsor us at all either, or as well. So.
Okay, and are these fundraisers something you've done in the past?
We have never sold T-shirts in the past. We've done other fundraisers and haven't found them to be super successful. So.
Okay, I understand. All right, well then I yield.
A la carte.
Permission to address the speaker?
Yes, you may.
Actually, sorry. Yes, to address the speaker. So our new excellent fund requirements specify that funds from the account may not be for a recurring event or ask. So how many of these uniforms are being given to individuals whose uniforms have already been previously funded?
That's a good question. So we have 14 new members this year that are in need of uniforms. So those would be the ones that we would need funding for. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so these specific uniforms are not for students who have previously been given uniforms from previous funding that we've approved.
Not that I recall, no. Some of them might be overlapping, but the majority of them wouldn't be.
Okay, I yield.
Vice Speaker Schrader.
Yeah, so the reason that the Excellence Fund is the only account that works is because uniforms are not funding eligible under PNC. So the only account available for this type of thing is Excellence. And because of the new requirement that it not be a recurring ask, it fails to meet that new account. I appreciate Senator Alucard for asking the right questions and trying to figure out if this is a recurring ask. I think the same organization asking for the same things qualifies as such, but that's the debate we need to have. I know in Finance Committee there was discussion of, well, let's just waive that part of the Excellence account. I'm not sure we can. Those are criteria proposed by the President, and even if we waive the bylaw, they still exist outside of the bylaws, and I'm not really sure we can just waive it. If we decided to ignore that and pass it anyway, we would be positively discriminating, but we would be viewpoint discriminating based off of we like the mission of a club, which means we have to do that for all clubs. We are a public university. We cannot pick and choose based off of ideology what we can fund. So if we funded this today, it would invalidate or it ought to validate that recurring ask line for any other club that comes through. And I'm not sure we can, and if we ignored that, we would be in trouble. If we funded this club and then not another one based off the same line, we could be in tricky legal troubles. University student governments have lost lawsuits in the past for similar things. So I think Senator Alucard is asking the right questions. Is this a recurring ask? And that's the question that we need to answer. I don't think there's a way around this because there's no other funds. There's no other account that we can pull it out of, and there's no way for us to get around this rule requirement. With that, I do think it's a recurring ask, and I'm really sad to say that. I am mad at myself for not seeing this happen when we voted for the criteria by the president. I regret that vote, but it's a vote that we took, and that is binding. And so I don't think we can fund this. It's rather unfortunate, but that's the situation we're at today. And with that, I will yield.
Speaker Culbertson.
Okay, first of all, may I address the speakers?
Yes, you may.
Okay, I heard you all were super fabulous at Finance Committee, even having to hear all of that go on. So thank you so much for that. That's so awesome to hear. And then I also just wanted to say, I kind of talked about this during the STD bill, but if you're really passionate about this group, whether this passes or not, and you really care about this cause, this is a really great time to network with our wonderful representatives up here and to stay in touch with them because, like they said, they've tried to do fundraising. It hasn't gone great. Well, maybe we could help them with that. We can work with them to help make that more successful so that they can continue to operate and have all these fantastic things. So I don't know, just another time to really step up and help them out. So yeah, I yield.
Senator Stanley.
All right, so I'd like to have a little throwback to less than a month ago, actually, when we debated the criteria for the Excellence Fund. During that debate, I asked, one of my concerns was that groups would not be able to come in and plead their case to us before Senate because their requests would effectively be shut down in Finance Committee by the committee sending them to us unfavorably. And that is, I think, the exact situation that we are faced with today. The vote has now turned into, is this group worthy of receiving funding or not, to does this group meet the Excellence Fund's criteria or not. It's now a rules or bylaw debate rather than a debate on the merits of the group, which is the exact concern that I had previously. And I was told, it's in the minutes, that having the criteria amended the way that they were would not restrict groups' abilities to come into Senate to ask for money. Finance Director Mueller said, everybody who submits a funding request can still come to Senate, which is what we're seeing here. But now I think that the nature of the game is fundamentally changed for groups. So while I understand Vice Speaker Schrader's concerns, and I certainly can see and I agree with them, in the spirit of my original argument on the Excellence Fund criteria, I will certainly vote yes for this request, because I think that looking at it on the merits of your group, I think that you certainly deserve this money. With that, I'll yield.
Senator Ludwig.
Yeah, so, I mean, just kind of on whether or not this is a reoccurring ask, I think it's unfortunately that it is. I do understand the kind of maybe the small distinction that Senator Alucard was raising, that it was for different people, so it might not necessarily be a reoccurring ask. But I think just it's kind of opens a hole in that rule that might cause problems later on down the road. And I also just think that actually I'm not going anywhere else with that point, but I also just think this is a result of the rules that we have for the Excellence Fund. And although I understand Senator Stanley would like to follow the spirit of the fund, we can't just ignore the rules when we don't like them all the time. And we set these rules no more than 4 weeks ago. I personally was against the rules. I voted against the Excellence Fund criteria because of the rule that said that they had to meet all criteria, because I think it causes unnecessary situations like this where we can't fund awesome groups. And I wish we could vote for this, and I wish I could vote for this, but it does not meet the criteria that we set out, that we voted for 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I don't think we can justify just turning our back on the rules like that just because we suddenly disagree with our past decisions. So with that, I yield.
Senator Meredith.
Okay, I might be going totally off base. I don't know if I'm thinking in the right way, but because the criteria set up by the president changes each year, is it intended to apply to all previous people who have ever asked for funding through the Excellence Fund? Because that's kind of like a retroactive rulemaking. And previously, if that was not a rule, I don't know that it's fair to tell them. I guess I'm looking at it in like, in this ask right now, are they planning on asking for this money to fund uniforms again in the upcoming future, rather than have they previously asked it when that was not necessarily, I guess I don't know if it was at that time. I don't know what the president did at that time. When they previously asked for the uniforms, was that in the Excellence Fund criteria at that time? So was the Excellence Fund intended to apply to, like the reoccurring ask intended to apply to every group that's ever asked for money out of the Excellence Fund ever in the student government history, or just during this year with these set criteria by President Graber? Is it that in the future of this year they can't plan on asking for it again?
Is that a question or a statement?
If you want to give any, you can, or it can be a statement. Doesn't matter.
Well, it depends on you. Do you want to ask President Graber a
Sure.
question?
Yep. I'll ask the question to you, President Graber.
Yeah, so I think that's a really, really good question and a really tricky question, because my criteria only stay for this year. And so if you came back next year and the reoccurring ask isn't in there, they could give it to you. So I think this is an unfortunate circumstance that I put that in there. And what is the definition of reoccurring? You said that you didn't ask for the Excellence Fund, if that makes sense, before you asked for funding for this. So is that then the definition of reoccurring? I think that's a decision that you all need to make. But it's a lot of great questions, and you make the decision.
Senator Searles.
Kind of along the same lines with that, not only is it retroactive rules making, we can get in, and I know the Finance Committee did this yesterday, the semantics of recurring, reoccurring, how often is reoccurring, whatever. This was 2 years ago now that they have asked for funding. They did not ask for funding last year. They also didn't ask specifically for the Excellence Fund. I was directed to choose it from the Excellence Fund. Personally, I think if the rules were just set in place 4 weeks ago and 2 years ago is when they last had their funding, to me that's not reoccurring in the current sense. Also, if the rules were set in place 4 weeks ago and they asked for funding 10 years ago, that's not reoccurring. So unless we set a threshold for when that reoccurrence interval is, we can't really adequately have this debate. And if there is one, Senator Class, would you like to speak on that?
Yeah, so in the minutes of the Finance Committee, you can see there was a lot of debate. In my opinion, and this is my own, having it, there is no threshold given in here. It's just recurring asks. It doesn't speak about if it's going to happen in the future. It doesn't speak about if it's going to be just in this term that these apply retroactively. I do understand that argument. However, in reading it, in Finance Committee, I voted to send it unfavorably because plain reading number 4 of the criteria, it's just recurring. It doesn't give any specifications about that. So I understand the arguments. However, they didn't win out in Finance Committee, I guess, is how I'm going to end that answer.
Okay, thank you. I understand that viewpoint. I go back to my stance that unless we set that threshold, student organizations shouldn't be the ones that are paying for our misunderstanding of our own guidelines and bylaws and PNC for recurring events. Like I said, 2 years ago was the last time that there was funding to this organization. That was a different body, different guidelines for the Excellence Fund. Did the Excellence Fund exist then? Okay. I knew that. But which there's a lot of changing pieces and a lot of non-definite definitions, and the ones that are going to be paying for that is Sparkle Squad. If we vote this down, I'm in support of this. I'm the author of it. I'm also in support of it. But I don't think that our misunderstanding, if we want to clear that up, we should clear that up within our group moving forward and not put this on the organizations that are coming to us for funding. Also, like they had already mentioned, Excellence Fund was put onto them. So if it's put onto them and then PNC wasn't met, that's also on us for that misunderstanding. I realize that I'm the author of this bill. However, this was kind of just an, hey, will you write this bill? Yes, so I did not understand what I was doing. Also not a part of Finance Committee. So I am in support of this bill. I would urge you to think about who's going to be paying for our misunderstanding of our own bylaws, PNC, and how we can go ahead in the future, because the reoccurrence is the point that we have to address moving forward. I yield.
Senator Han Young.
So, as Senator Seals was talking about, the reoccurring looks like it's more of like a past versus future sort of thing. I would just like to say that from when I voted for that recurring thing, I was under the impression that it would be groups that had come back in consecutive years for the same line item over several years. So since this sounds like something that there was turnover from the group 2 years ago to now, I would say that the recurring doesn't apply. Obviously, it's a very vague sort of definition for it, so I want to hear what more people have to say for it, but currently I am in support of funding this group.
Senator Zastro.
So yesterday in Finance Committee, this was voted, is this on? Yeah. This was voted to be sent unfavorably 5 to 3 to 1. I was one of the 3 people who thought that it should not be sent unfavorably, purely because I'm kind of with Senator Searles, where I definitely agree that this does violate the terms of the Excellence Fund account. And sorry, that's not what you're saying. But I do think that we should not be strictly bound by criteria that we said 4 weeks ago that we didn't necessarily know the implications of. So this is essentially why I voted no, because I thought that we need to have a really substantive discussion on the Excellence account, on the Excellence Fund, with, I mean, a document that's requesting funds from it, because it was sort of intangible. We didn't necessarily know the effects, and now we do. I would like to direct a question to Vice President Badia.
Yes.
Later in the meeting, we do have a bill to waive bylaws. Would it be an option to call up that bill, amend it so that we could suspend the bylaws of the Excellence Fund, and then come back to this bill and have it where we wouldn't be bound by the same criteria?
So you mean you want to table this bill, and then when we are into new business, you want to bring this bill again? Is that what you're asking?
The current bill that we're seeing later to waive bylaws only applies to sections 4 and 5.
Right.
So we need to amend that bill so that we're able to also waive the bylaws of the Excellence Fund.
No, we can't do that.
Okay. In that case, what Vice Speaker Schrader said earlier about viewpoint discrimination, like Senator Searles, I agree with you completely. This is an excellent, this is an excellent group that they're requesting money from the Excellence Fund. And while I really do think that we shouldn't be bound by something that we said 4 weeks ago, we said it. And that's unfortunate. I wish we could undo that decision, but if we're not able to amend those, then I believe it would be viewpoint discrimination to give money to this group that clearly violates the bylaws. I believe that this is absolutely recurring cost, and trying to say that it's not recurring is semantics. I don't know. I'll yield.
Senator Fritz.
So this is more of a logistical question. Would we be able to go back to the Excellence Fund and clarify what reoccurring means before we vote on this? Because I do agree that I want this to be funded wholeheartedly. However, I am just very worried about setting a precedence of this, because if we don't follow this rule, any other club that comes in here after this will not have to follow that rule as well, and that could lead, I don't know, to a mess of lawsuits or something. So I don't know who to direct that question to. Kelsey?
Unfortunately, we cannot amend the Excellence Fund, so what we passed is what we passed. Well, okay. We're talking about some other stuff, but as of like actually amending it to like kind of clarify what we mean specifically for that, we can't.
Okay, okay. So that's just what I have to say about that as far as setting a precedence goes. But I mean, whatever happens, I would love to purchase a t-shirt, so get in contact with me, but I yield.
Senator Ludwig.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, I guess, go over a few different things. One, in relation to the bylaw bill that's coming up later tonight, that bill does not allow us to waive funding requirements. That is simply for like committee rules, for instance, if we wanted to waive like committee limits or like special rules on like how we discuss things here in the Senate, just to make things more efficient, because that's typically how we've waived bylaws in the past. And so that bill would not allow us to just waive this criteria. Second, I think it's really important that, I just want to reiterate that it's really important that we listen to the rules that we set 3 weeks ago. It's, you know, it's unfortunate, and I'm not happy about the rules that we have, but those are the rules that we have. And I know that we talked about we can't amend the criteria, but what we could do is amend the bylaws. We could change the way the Excellence Fund is structured. We could change the idea of it being shifting requirements year to year. And so, I mean, that would be something I would be more interested in, and maybe coming back to this group, because I really want to fund this. I think it's great, but given the current rules, I don't see how we can justify breaking the rules that we set 3 weeks ago. So, I mean, and Finance Director Mueller seems to have a point. I yield to
Where
him.
does it say we cannot change the Excellence Fund criteria? I would like you to give me a line where it says we cannot suspend those
I
or
have the
change them
bylaws
or
open.
waive a bylaw right now. Deep.
No, you cannot ask because.
Because I was yielded
Senator
time,
Ludwig.
sorry.
I would like to direct the wording of Finance Director Mueller's question to Senator Stanley.
It does not say that explicitly, but I would infer that the Excellence Fund criteria cannot be amended from the bylaw where it says that the criteria shall not be amended on the floor by the Senate. To me, that says that you cannot amend them the Senate cannot amend them retroactively. Yes.
So can the president and vice president propose new criteria right this second?
Wait. It's Senator Ludwig's time.
Yeah.
Please.
Reading the section, sorry, I'm trying to, you have it open. Yeah, so it says the wording is the president shall propose by the second meeting of the second session a specific set of evaluation criteria not to be amended by the Senate to be used for allocating money from this account for the remainder of the fiscal year. So under the current rules, we cannot change them mid-year. Technically, we didn't even get the criteria in by the right time, but we can't change them now. But what we could do is pass a bylaw bill to amend the section and have them back in a week or two. That would be the only way that we could change the current rules for the Excellence Fund.
So
Is that
we
a
are
Senator Mueller, he didn't ask you a question, so.
Senator Zastro seems to have thoughts.
Am I correct in thinking that that bylaw was waived? For one meeting? Okay, never mind.
Senator Ludwig, it's still your time.
Yeah, so anyways, my point is that if we want to do this and we want to do it right and we want to follow our own rules, the best way to do that is to table this bill if we can. Assuming we could table it for a week or two, and then pass a bylaw bill to change that section and change how the Excellence Fund works. But other than that, I really don't see how we justify breaking the rules that we set for ourselves 3 weeks ago. So I yield.
Senator Heasley. Just a clarification, there's about less than 15 minutes left on this bill.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's been said enough already, but this goes against the funding criteria that we set in the Excellence Fund. We have to understand that we set those rules and we have to live with the consequences. Though this is something super cool, which would be awesome to fund, we can't just break the rules. Like it's already been stated by Vice Speaker Schrader, and I think we've exhausted enough time on this, so I would urge that we end debate and vote on this. So I would like to call the question.
There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. You cannot object, Matt. All right, I heard it. Y'all don't have to repeat it. There's been an objection.
I withdraw. Finance Director Mueller, what do you got?
I would like to reiterate what Zastro said. So is it correct that we waived 11.7.17.4 and said that we were waiting another week to propose till the third meeting to propose the evaluation criteria? Is that correct?
Who are you asking that question?
Anybody that knows the answer.
Yes, but just for one meeting, just for that meeting.
That bylaw was only there for a week.
So we can't waive that bylaw again right now and ignore the criteria? And why can't we waive the criteria? They are part of the bylaws. The way I read this is that those criteria become part of the bylaws, and then we can waive bylaws. I know you said that we can't waive the criteria when it comes to the floor, but now it's already been set, which means it is part of the bylaws for the year, which means we can waive bylaws. Now, if you want to say we don't want to viewpoint discriminate, we can waive it for the rest of the year. Austin and Vish can say we screwed up and we don't want that anymore. That is an option, and we can waive bylaws. We are the parliament. We can change the bylaws. That's a thing we can do because we just did it 2 weeks ago.
Senator Stanley, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, so here's the formal process for waiving bylaws according to section, I believe it's 57 of Robert's Rules of Order, 11th edition. So to waive a bylaw, it requires a motion to be made on the floor, but you have to give notice of intent to make the motion either in the call of the present meeting. So how we interpreted this last year was as during the sending out of the ledge packet, you either reply all to the email or you have Kelsey, Speaker Culbertson, include a blurb in there detailing the exact bylaw you want to waive and your rationale for it, or you just shout it out during the previous meeting. So if I wanted to waive a bylaw for next week, I would just shout out right now, look, I want to waive X, Y, and Z bylaw. So Finance Director Mueller, you are correct. We are the parliament, and we do have certain authority over our rules of order, but we also have to follow those rules of order and follow the procedures that they outline. Now, the spirit of the Excellence Fund is that it gives the president and vice president some power of the purse, as it were. If this was Senate unilaterally deciding, hey, let's throw the criteria that we passed 3 weeks ago out the window, I would be very, very, very hesitant about that. But if the president and vice president are on board with it, on board with a process it would essentially have to be revamping all of 11.7.17. I don't think there's any way you'd be able to get around a complete, an overhaul, essentially. But if they were on board with that, it would certainly carry a lot more weight, I think, than how it currently is. Because how it currently stands is Senate is attempting to, in my opinion, overreach and mess with one of the sole powers that the executives can utilize without a check from us. So, President Graber, would you like to add something?
We're making this a lot more complex than it needs to be, and I think Senator Searles and Senator Zastro were asking the right question in you all are defining what does reoccurring mean. If you believe it is a yearly thing, vote that way. If you believe that, hey, it was 2 years ago, that's reoccurring, vote that way. I think that makes it a lot easier on all of us rather than waiving the entire bylaws, because I agree with Ludwig and the fact that we have the rules for a reason, so use them. You can make the decision right now, what does reoccurring mean? I think Searles is on the right track in that aspect.
All right, I'm going to retain my time, and I would like to call the question.
There's been a call to question on the bill, and is there a second? There's been a second. Are there any objections?
Object.
I withdraw.
Thank you. Vice Speaker Schrader.
Okay, first I would like to apologize to our Sparkle Squad representatives. Senate does not have the power to interpret the laws. That is a power in the courts. Under our current Constitution, only the Supreme Court has the power to determine cases of governing document confusion, which this seems to be. We are trying to interpret on the floor like 6 different things, 4 different ways, just to try and get what we want. This is something that a binding precedent from our Supreme Court to interpret what that means is required. Now, President Graber has not appointed anyone to that court, but that's not really our problem. President Graber should appoint people, as is a constitutional duty, to the court soon, so that we can rule on what the heck is a recurring ask. Can we waive these bylaws? Is this a bylaw? Are we allowed to amend the criteria after their passage? This is a question that Senate is not equipped to able to answer, nor is it able to. I would also like to remind Finance Director Mueller that she is not a senator. This is a discussion for Senate. You need a speaking privilege to talk. And I think that unless a senator yields to you, it would be wise to follow the rules as we engage in a complex debate. I would like to table this discussion, to postpone this bill for an unspecified amount of time until Supreme Court is able to rule on what the parts we are confused about mean. And I think that is the only way we can resolve this without violating our own rules, without violating the United States Constitution in the future if we ever decide not to fund someone using this line. We are in very dangerous waters, and we need to proceed with great care. And that is something that a court can lay out specifically and interpret beyond just the little lines. So with that, I would like to move to table this bill indefinitely.
There's been a motion to table this bill indefinitely, and there's been a second.
Object.
There's been an objection. Do you withdraw?
No.
So we move into discussion of whether we should table this bill indefinitely or not with Vice Speaker Schrader.
Try and keep it quick. I yield.
Senator Hanyang.
Can I just ask, I want to ask the group one question about funding that is unrelated to tabling. I'm in support of what Vice Speaker Schrader is saying, but I would like to ask the group one question before we do so. I yield.
Senator Meredith.
I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but am I allowed to ask them something that is relevant to whether we table it or not?
Yes.
Okay. If we table this for an indefinite amount of time, AKA we have no idea when this will ever come back up because we have no idea when the judicial branch will be set up, will this hinder you guys being able to buy uniforms for your season this year?
Potentially. So the lady that we are working with to get our uniforms said that there's a way to pay later but hasn't specified how. So I'm not really sure what that's going to look like. We'll still go about with our t-shirt sales and see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, it would potentially hinder it.
Okay.
So.
I would say that's risky business to have them purchase them in the event that they might be thinking that they're going to get the funding, then they don't get the funding, and then they're in debt. So I think it's probably better that we make a decision tonight. That way we don't end up hurting them in the future. But I do understand all the points being made. So I yield.
Senator Stanley.
I was going to ask that same question myself. While I agree that this is a matter that should be brought to the court, the fact of the matter is that as we stand currently, we do not have a court, and we have to work with what we have been given. First, I deeply apologize for all the confusion. We apparently did not put enough thought into our rules of 3 weeks ago, and now this is the result, unfortunately. Either way, personally, I'm in favor of tabling this solely because I think the consideration of us potentially being sued is certainly a very serious and grave one, and I would like to give as much care as possible to that. But if you wish to have the discussion now, I think that there is merit to that because as it stands, as the situation currently stands, we are the Senate, we are the body that can vote on this and thus set a precedent in the absence of a court. So with that, I'll yield to Senator Heasley at his request.
I agree with both what Senator Stanley said and Vice Speaker Schrader has said. For y'all, I wouldn't, don't assume that we'll give you this money because we can't make that decision yet. So that's all I would have to say with that. So I yield back to Senator Stanley.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more to be said. So again, I'd encourage people to keep it quick, and let's figure out what we're doing with this as efficiently and quickly as possible.
Do you yield? Oligard. Oh. Ludwig. Oh, do you still want to speak?
Yes, I still would like to speak. I know the comment was just made that we need to work with what we have, but we decided last week when we stayed here late that what we have is a Supreme Court. And we didn't outline timelines for the executive branch to fill those positions. And so I am definitely in favor of tabling this, but I do just want to consider that, you know, just as in, you know, local, state, and federal government, when laws are made, they become laws at certain points. If we're potentially wanting to make rules that apply to future dates, that's great, but what we have is what we voted on and what we stayed here late to discuss. And so I am in support of tabling this because I do think that this puts us in a really big legal quandary that I'm not willing to put myself in, or anyone in this room for that matter. And so I would urge you guys to be in support of tabling this. And if the concern is an indefinite amount of time, maybe we could propose a certain number of weeks. So that would then require the executive branch to fill those positions to then get on this, because now we have something that's a pressing matter. I would also be in support of that, and I yield.
Senator Class.
So an alternative option to present is reading. So organizations get classified into different categories for funding. One category is sponsored, which then does not, as spoken about earlier, can purchase capital items, which these uniforms are. This club, and as dictated in our bylaws, what sponsored organizations are, they serve the broad interests of student and general public, not just its members, are operated and maintained by its members, and contribute to the mission, vision, goals, and culture of student government in the university by routinely presenting events for members of the university community. We can reclassify them as sponsored, and then we can fund their capital items. But Senator Zastro, I ask a question of you to speak.
Thank you, Senator Class. Uniforms under PNC are not listed as capital items. They are listed specifically as a funding ineligible expenditure, which does not mean that they are able to be spent because they are a sponsored organization, as capital items are.
As discussed earlier tonight, we can not follow precedent for sponsored items. As I'm talking myself back, I understand. We could not follow the precedent of that because sponsored clubs do not have to follow PNC. Schrader, Vice Speaker Schrader, I yield to you.
I think that's an argument for this because we could bring it back off the table the moment they get sponsored.
Yes.
Okay.
That
I just
is
was trying to.
my alternative path is table this for a week. We meet with the club, we reclassify them, and then we bring them back and have a whole different discussion instead about what recurring means and the courts and the timeline for all of this and waiving bylaws. I yield.
Senator Mass.
How much time is remaining on the motion?
3 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to yield to President Graber in order for him to provide context within the Supreme Court, as this is what this motion is on. I will yield to President Graber with the condition that I am able to reclaim my time at any point.
Yes, so it was brought up that we currently do not have a Supreme Court. That is because they have not met in the past 3 years, and there's nothing for them to do currently. That is why we are having the court reform. We do have one justice, so if you want to ask him the opinion, feel free to. He was studying abroad last year. We didn't even know he existed, and then he came back and said, hey, I'm a justice. So you can do that route, or you can table and do the sponsored route. as well. But I would definitely strongly be opposed of tabling it till I have a court because of the entire court reform process, and I do not want to rush the court, given the fact that they will be able to have, as long as they are at Iowa State term length, if that makes sense. That was really poorly worded, but I don't want to rush at all, and I think that would be a horrible idea to do. So that's my 2 cents.
I yield.
Senator Ludwig.
Yeah, so I'd just like to, I guess, remind Senator Stanley that we can't just assume the powers of the court at any point. So I would be hesitant to do that just because they don't exist, even though, well, they do exist. One member, though, they couldn't meet. They require 6 justices to have quorum. And so, yeah, I think if we want to follow the rules, we should postpone whether we reclassify or get a court or change the bylaws. I think we need to do something. I think it's evident that clearly the Senate suddenly doesn't like the criteria we set out 3 weeks ago. So maybe we should relook at that, whether that be finding a way to amend the criteria or change the rules for how the Excellence Fund works. But I think we should postpone so that we can find a way, hopefully within the next couple weeks, to get this group funding, because I think it's an awesome organization. I think they do fantastic things, and I want to give them this money, but we cannot do it with the current rules. So, yeah, I would like to ask Senator Schrader if he would be interested in, instead of indefinitely, setting it to like 2 or 3 weeks.
I think that would accomplish the same thing because we could pull it off at any point.
We can?
So at any point that you think we are ready for it, you can just pull it off.
Okay, all right, yeah, so, yeah, let's just, I really think we should just table this, and hopefully we can have a bill or new criteria on the floor next week, and then we can come back to this, because we really should do it, so I yield.
Yeah, so it's in my opinion that we should be voting on this bill tonight. I think that we can very easily interpret the bylaws by deciding whether or not this is or is not a recurring cost. I understand that there's not much time left on debate, so I'll yield.
There's been a call to question, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none? Yes. The motion right now is to move to table it indefinitely. If the Senate votes yes, we table it indefinitely. If Senate votes no, we move back to discussion.
Right. Was the caveat of until the court, is that a part
No,
of that, or that was
it's just table indefinitely.
conjecture? Got it. Cool. Thanks. Bye.
Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote. Placard vote. Senators were for tabling this bill indefinitely. Senators against? Senator abstentions? With a vote of 22 to 5 to 0, we table this bill indefinitely. Yes. Yes. All right. So we tabled this bill indefinitely. So that means that we don't have a timeline of when this will be picked up on the agenda. This could be picked up in the coming week, on the next week, in the next meeting, and the next meeting, or maybe in the January. So what I think would be the best case would be you will be notified when the Senate is intending to pick up the bill, I believe by like Monday or Tuesday. I hope so, that you will be notified so that you all can be present. I know it's going to be a busy week for you all as well, but hang in there.
All right.
We'll get you an answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for coming.
Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.
There is a quorum. Did you say a quorum call? Advet, Oliver, Bender, Blair, Khan, Crab, Culbertson, Dollinger, Fritz, Green, Hanyang, Heasley, Johnson, Class, Klein, Lipford, Ludwig, Mass, Meredith, Mitchell, Rice, Rinchi, Schrader, Searles, Stanley, Samuel, Tonet, Zastro, Rolling, Zamanu. We have quorum. Moving on to internal matters. Within internal matters, special orders. What? Finance Director Miller, you cannot speak in the middle of the Senate. You're not allowed. You cannot ask to the whole Senate. You can ask to Speaker Culbertson or Vice Speaker Schrader, but you cannot interject in the middle of the Senate. Thank you. Within internal matters, special orders 2019-2-33 SG, seating senators to IRHA with Speaker Culbertson.
Okay, if our two nominees want to approach the lectern and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get your names filled into the bill. So, yes. Or we just have the one here. Okay, I yield to Senator Zastro.
Yeah, so we just have one nominee, Patrick. You can head up there. And then the other one wasn't able to be here tonight. This whole process was really tight. She didn't know that she was going to be nominated until earlier today, so she had a previous commitment. Normally, she'll be able to come to the Senate meetings. Tonight's a special circumstance. But I do have a written statement from her, so I'll just read that now. Hello, everyone. I apologize in advance that I cannot attend the meeting tonight, but rest assured that I'm completely there in spirit. My name is Mariana Gonzalez, and I'm a freshman double majoring in political science and public relations. My career aspirations are to work on a presidential and gubernatorial campaign and eventually run for federal office myself. Throughout high school, I was extremely involved in club sports and other extracurriculars, with student government being my main focus. At Iowa State, I didn't want to waste my time continuing my passion for leadership. This role is a great way for me to become involved, exercise my abilities as a liaison, and become familiar with various campus organizations. I would like to express how thankful and excited I am to have the opportunity to serve as a student government senator for IRHA. Hope you all have a great meeting. So yeah, both of these candidates were taken from a larger field and were approved by the Senate. Oh yeah, I would motion to amend the bill to fill the blanks with Patrick Orger and Mariana Gonzalez.
There's been a motion to amend the bill to the name of the nominees. Would you be able to repeat that?
Who's already on? Patrick Orger and Mariana Gonzalez.
Is there a second? There's been a second. Are we moving to? Is that the name spelled correctly, Senator Zastro? Do you know?
Yes.
We move into discussion. Senator Zastro.
I'll yield, Patrick. You can.
It's the amendment. Just want to make sure.
Oh, call the question.
There's been a called question, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote. And there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the amendment by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment stands approved. Senator Zastro.
Patrick, you want to talk a little about yourself?
All right, like Mason said, my name is Patrick Orger. I am majoring in computer engineering. And I would like to say I've been involved in many different leadership positions and offices throughout my high school career. And I would like to continue that, being a part of Student Government Senate. And my main goal isn't a point, straight, shoot. It's just make life for students on campus and even people in the community as great as it can be from what we can do. And I'd just like to say to make everything as least stressful for students on campus as it can. And that is basically it.
Senator Ludwig.
Yeah, so I'd just like to say that I personally know Mariana. She is a member of First Year Council. She's one of my general members, and she's fantastic. She's really motivated. She's really excited to be a part of student government, and she'll be a fantastic senator. And so I
really look forward to having her join us. So yeah, I just want to put that out there. I yield.
Senator Easley.
May I address the speaker?
Yes, you may.
I feel like we've had a lack of Senator Orger in here for quite a while now, so I'm happy that you've decided to step up. However, do you think you can live up to the name Senator Orger?
Completely.
And I would like to direct a question to former Senator Orger. Do you have confidence in this new Senator Orger to fulfill the name of Senator Orger?
There was no one else that I would want to be Senator Orger, other than myself.
That sounds good to me. Well, you're still here after just witnessing all that, so you're already doing great. With that, I think I'm going to call to question.
There's been a call to question on the bill as a whole, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into, thank you. There's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the nominees by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, congratulations.
Okay, so I'll have you raise your right hand and then repeat after me. I solemnly swear or affirm
I solemnly swear and affirm
to execute the duties of my position
to execute the duties of my position
as prescribed in the Constitution
as prescribed in the Constitution
and laws of the government
and laws in the government
for the benefit of all students.
for the benefit of all students.
Congratulations.
Moving on to 2019-2-34 SC. Senator Class, what do you have?
We have an organization that has to leave, so I move to enter the, no, I can't do that first. I move to waive Bylaw 4.6.2.10, which states new business which consists of all legislation currently being considered in its first reading.
There's been a motion to waive the stated bylaw.
Second.
And there's been a second. Are there any objections in waiving the stated bylaw? Would you be able to state the bylaw again?
4.6.2.10. To give context, we have an organization that has to leave. There was error on parts of multiple people. I'm guessing, I don't really know what happened. But this was not on the agenda last week. Therefore, it is a first read. We are going to have to waive first read, but they also have to leave early. So after the previous debate, they're pressed for time, which is why we're trying to move this along. So I call the question. Yes, that's the intent.
All right. Are there any objections to that? Seeing none, the bylaw has been waived.
I now move to consider the, sorry, this is, where is it? What bill number is it? I move to consider 2019-2-031F, funding skydivers.
There's been a motion to consider 2019-2-31F, funding Skydivers Club, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the bill.
Call the question.
Reluctantly moving to the bill.
Never mind, we didn't have to do that. Okay, cool.
You didn't have to do that.
Awesome. So now we're on. Cool. Whose bill is this?
Senator Lifford.
I move to accept the minutes from Finance Committee.
Title.
No, this isn't first read.
Oh,
We have to waive first read.
I move to waive first read.
Move to consider as read.
Move consider as read.
Second.
Questions of intent?
Move to consider as read? Is that what you want?
No.
Oh, I move to waive second read.
We cannot. It's Senator Lifford, so you have to ask question of intent so that he can say yes and he can move the bill to.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Question.
Ask.
Senator Easley.
Is it your intent to waive second read.
Yes.
So, do you want, there's been a motion to waive the second read. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a second. Are there any objections to waiving the second read on this bill? Seeing none, the second read has been waived. Senator Lifford.
I move to accept amendments from Finance Committee.
There's been a motion to accept the Finance Committee's amendments.
Oh, okay. There wasn't any amendments because this is the first time you guys are seeing it.
Do you take the motion back?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we have the student representative here. He's really pressed for time, so ask him short questions. Here he is.
Questions for a speaker? Motions? There's been a call to question on the bill.
Withdraw.
Senator Easley.
Would you like to discuss this bill real quick?
Me?
Yes, you.
What would you like me to discuss?
Just give us an overview of what it is and why we're seeing this so quickly.
Yeah, so I was told to be here at 7:30. I'm supposed to be at work right now, so that's why we're seeing this quickly. This is for the Skydiving Club, and this is just our funding request for the year.
Okay, well, I guess if you have a question, Senator Claus?
Yeah, Finance Committee sent this favorably, if anyone wondered.
And then why didn't you guys attend annuals?
So if it was up to me, I would have attended annuals. I was not in an exec position, and the previous people that were in exec positions apparently had the graduation on their mind and nothing else, and they did not attend. And I had no say in that. So now that I'm in an exec position, I'm doing everything I can to get funding for our club. Like I said, I was in no position when they made that decision to not attend or whatever happened with them. So that's why I'm here now.
Okay. It'd be like that sometimes, and I respect that, so I'm going to yield.
Senator Hanyang.
Senator Lippert, would you take a friendly to update the enacted clause to the current total? Okay. I yield.
Do you yield? Senator Zastro. Oh, Senator Fritz. My bad.
Permission to address the speaker?
Yes, you may.
Okay. So it looks like there are some trips that you're going on, like a competitive trip, it looks like. So how many people will be attending that?
So it's one trip with multiple things in that trip, and there will be 2, maybe 3 attending that this year.
Okay. So how much money total will it cost to go on that trip for you 3? It's hard to see the totals right now.
I do not have the numbers in front of me. The numbers up on the document would be the cost for the trip. There's individual registration, there's travel costs, there's individual registrations for different events.
Okay.
Senator Rinchi.
Yep.
It's, yes, now you can.
Okay.
That was not all for the competition.
Okay. Additionally, how do you get your money? Do you do fundraising? How's that look?
Yeah, so the money that we get is to subsidize skydiving. It's not to directly pay for skydiving. So we make some money through the sales of tandem skydives, as well as just members that are currently jumping. Again, it subsidizes them, but they do also pay for some of their jumps. So all that money does go into the club.
Okay, so you make your money through having people go skydiving with you, or?
Skydiving in the club at various locations in Iowa, yes. So
Okay.
we sell discounted tandem jumps, which is the first jump that you would make as a skydiver, and we are the cheapest way to do that. We use the money to subsidize that, as well as use it as kind of like incoming money as a fundraiser as well.
Okay, so are you guys kind of like a business then?
No.
No, okay. Maybe I'm just confused on how that funding works. But do you take people tandem skydiving with you?
So we sell to the different skydiving businesses like certificates. We get certificates from those businesses, and then we turn around and sell them at a discounted cost to get people into the sport and experience the sport, and then we help subsidize the costs in the future if they want to become a continued jumper.
Okay, I yield.
Senator Han Young.
I realized that Senator Fritz just asked some questions about it, but I'm going to go ahead and call to question since Finance Committee's had it.
There's been a call to question, and there's been a second. Are there any objections?
I withdraw.
You object? Did you withdraw? Senator Zastro.
Yeah, so I would just like to ask a couple more questions. Could you talk about how many people are in your club?
Yeah, so currently we have upwards of 200 and many more that are interested, especially if we get funding. So the kind of draw from our club is to experience skydiving for the first time. Many people's bucket list item. Cost is one of those big things that prevents them from experiencing that for the first time. So by us discounting that for them and then giving them different options to continue in the sport is kind of the draw to the club. We were just at Club Fest, had over 250 people sign up for our interest list. I lost my voice because I never stopped talking at Club Fest. So there's tons of interest. Could you even grow the club? We have 8 current jumpers, and there's many more that also want to go through the training to become a solo jumper. So just a lot of interest in the club, and I picked it up where it was kind of without exec and dying out, and now I'm getting it back up and running again. So the numbers are roughly around 200. I could see that expanding.
And those 200 people, are those people who are regularly jumping?
No, that would be 200 people interested in doing a first jump, have jumped for the first time, or are current jumpers.
Okay, and then, so you said that you use outside companies and then you subsidize those tickets?
Correct.
So what would the airplane rental and the gear rental be for then?
So that's for the tandem skydives, because tandem skydive requires an airplane and the gear.
So is this airplane rent, so when you say airplane rental and gear rental, that is for you to pay another organization that then does the skydiving?
Correct.
Okay. Just to address the floor of the Senate, I would like to say this is $5,600, and we have $40,000 for the entire year. After tonight, we're probably going to be down, if this bill passes or doesn't pass, somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000. This is an enormous chunk of our budget, and this is something that, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think will affect too many students. I think that this expenditure is much larger than anything that this expenditure is taking more money from the average student than it's giving back. That's my opinion. You guys can vote how you want. I do not think that this is a justifiable cost. I think it follows PNC in every way. That I don't think that means that this is something that the Senate should vote positively for. I'll yield.
Senator Rinchi.
I want to kind of build on that argument a little bit too, because if this is going to cost about $5,600, I want to remind you that we just spent $5,000 to provide meals, over 50,000 meals to people, and this is also something that students at our campus can get involved in packaging and taking care of meals that are, something that a way that they can go serve the community. While I admire the mission of this club, I don't know that it actually fits. I don't think it fits an over-encompassing student value, and I don't know if it's exactly the value that our students would be looking for us to vote for as their senators, even though I do like where you're coming from, but I just don't see us being able to support it. Thank you.
Senator Stanley.
I'd like to address a question to Finance Director Mueller. Is it possible for us to move money from from special projects to Senate discretionary?
It says in the bylaws we can move an additional $20,000 up to $60,000 for the year, but we cap out at 60 grand.
How much money, if any, have we moved from special projects up till now?
0.
Okay. Well, I think in light of that, we should certainly keep that also under consideration. Senator Zastro, I see your point, and I certainly agree with your considerations. But I think that is another consideration that we should make. I'll yield since there are other placards up.
Senator Dvit.
I would like to yield to the speaker. I think they wanted to say something.
Yeah, I would just say that just because our activity costs more to begin with doesn't mean that we aren't valid to affect many students. I think the large number is very jarring when you first see it, but that is just kind of inherent with the club. And I would just say that we still do affect a lot of students. And it is a great activity that a lot of people could take benefit from if we get funded.
Cool. I'd like to make my own point now. I do understand Senator Zastro's point that he, and I'm guessing a lot of people in this room, think this has taken a lot more from students than students are getting back. I just wanted to point out, I think it is possible for us to reduce the amount of funding someone gets. I still think this is an interesting club, and this will engage a lot of students. However, we could potentially fund less than 100% of the amount they have here, so as to fix the whole students losing more than they're getting back problem some people might be seeing here. I yield.
Senator Rinchi. Senator Green.
I'm just confused as to why we, like the Meals on Wheels thing or whatever that we just funded and how that was like just as expensive as this. Why would we fund that and not this when, like, although that was a good cause, but it wasn't going back to our students like really at all. But like this is something, obviously 200 kids, like it's gonna help them. Like although we think this is expensive on this one thing, it's kind of weird to exclude them just because theirs is more expensive. Like that's kind of problematic, in my opinion.
Senator Meredith.
I have 2 points. One, we should try and keep it short because he's supposed to be at work. Two, we're supposed to benefit all of the students on campus, and I think saying we're not going to fund this because it might be like a minority group of students is kind of rude. I yield.
Senator Fred.
I yield my time to Senator Zastro.
I'd just like to say I don't think that this activity is any intrinsically less valuable. I'd love to do skydiving. I think that's really cool, kind of scary. But the fact of the matter is this does cost a lot more money, and I think we need to be conscientious about that. If we said that this activity was equal to all other activities, we need to understand that equal activity and costing more money, that's where our discretion comes in. We need to be the ones to decide whether or not an activity is worth what it is.
I yield.
Senator Klein. Senator Ricci.
On the note of the cost, I do appreciate where you're coming from. However, I have a bit of a moral dilemma when it comes to. I'm happy to sponsor something that I know that students from all colleges can volunteer to help out packaging those meals for someone outside of the community. But I don't think that I could confidently stand before my constituents and say that looking at the cost of the airplane rental and the gear rental, that I was going to say why 3 students were worth $4,500 when 50,000 meals was worth $5,000. That's kind of, I just would all ask you to ask the same question. It's not whether or not we support what they're working for, but are we willing to say that 3 students are, or that this is going to be worth what it is? You have a question, go ahead.
This isn't all for one trip down to a competition for 3 students. This would be funding, like I said, that 200, maybe many more from Club Fest. So this isn't just for 3 students.
But you have 2 to 3 students tandem jumping right now, and that's where I see airplane rental and gear.
That would be false. We have 2 to 3 students going to this national competition because we have our A licenses, and we have many more that would like to make their first jump or continue into training. And the tandem jump is the first jump. So the 3 students are well past the tandem jumps, and they're going to the national competition. And the many other students are trying their first jump, as well as maybe in the middle of training to become a solo jumper to aspire to be going to that national competition.
Thank you very much for the clarification. So how many students could jump on that budget?
So that budget would allow us, I guess I haven't done the specific math on it, but upwards of 100 students at least, and probably more.
Thank you.
Senator Heasley.
Yeah, so this is something we'd typically fund during annual allocations, but due to circumstances which were already explained, it didn't. So I think this is perfectly reasonable to fund all of this because we would fund it, no questions asked anyways, and if they end up going to annual allocations this year, we probably will. So for the sake of time, I guess, call to question.
There's been a call to question. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we will move into a roll call vote. Advait? Alucard? No. Bender? No. Blair? Khan?
Culbertson? Crab? Khan? Khan? Dollinger? Fritz? Green? Hanyang? Heasley? Johnson? Class? Klein? Clifford? Ludwig? Mass? Meredith? Mitchell? Rice? Rinchi? Rolling? Schrader? Searles? Stanley? Samuel? Tonette? Zastro? Advait? With a vote of 20 to 6 to 1, this funding bill passes. Moving on to 2019-2-34SC, seating senators to Green Initiatives Committee with Speaker Culbertson.
If our two senators would please approach the lectern and tell us about why they'd like to be on the committee, that'd be great.
Wow. So, hey, I'm Ian Searles, Senator Searles. I'd like to be on the committee. So I'm also on Sustainability Committee. Well, not yet, I guess. Never mind. Green Initiatives is really kind of a huge part of the reason that I got into student government. I do paleoclimate research. My whole career focus is environmentally focused paleoclimate and climate modeling. It's kind of my whole goal. And then part of that is green initiatives, making sure that we can be around to continue forecasting the climate in the future and so that everything else exists. So on a campus, that's kind of my whole point of being here.
Hi, I'm Jacob Kahn, computer engineering major. While my major may not pertain as well as Ian does, I would argue that computer engineers are always willing to go paperless. And this is definitely a sustainability committee that I very much am interested in. Also, to save us all some time, I am definitely willing to allow for this time commitment to be part of my life, so then you don't have to ask that.
Me too. Senator Stanley.
Hello, you two. Thank you for your participation. It's always great to see people getting involved. So what, in your opinion, is the ideal green initiative?
Let me tell you all about composting. I love it. Okay, everyone can do composting. It's rad. It's like something that it can be in small scale, large scale, what have you. All you need is like a 5-gallon Menards bucket and some worms maybe, if you know. I know a worm guy, Michael. He talked last week. Very knowledgeable, always has many free worms. Compost.
Without spending too much time getting to the philosophical debate of what good initiatives are, we have to recognize where most of our pollutants and emissions as a world come from, and it's from a few corporations. I think institutionally, we need to be focused on sustainability and green initiatives. That's why in another green organization that I'm hoping to be seated officially into, I'm on the University and City Relations, because when we're talking about green initiatives, that should be the focus. Student-led, there's a bunch of ways we can cut down our own emissions and our own impact on the environment, but really the big initiatives should come from institutional and the large polluters and emitters in the planet.
Great, both very good answers, thank you. Have you, I know both of you have interacted with constituents a fair amount. Do you have any initiatives in mind, perhaps student organizations, initiatives that you would like to fund?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a Freddie Court senator. Last year, Freddie Court did a trial run of composting in Freddie Court, and it went very well. We're working on getting that permanently instituted, providing composting bins to all the apartments, and then putting the composting bins, the large receptacles outside of various apartment clusters is what we call them, communities, and allowing all of the residents of Freddie Court to compost. That is a quarter of the on-campus residents at Iowa State, so that would be a huge impact on the student population here.
A club that we also work with is Engineers for a Sustainable World. They actually have some very fantastic initiatives that we would be more than happy to fund. One of them including my personal favorite. It's a big grinder where you take all your single-use plastics, turns it into filament for 3D printers. So then it does actually have use to be made into something new and different as opposed to just being put in a landfill.
Awesome. Yeah, these two have both demonstrated their passion for sustainability. Senator Searles by exhorting us to be better with our own personal waste in the office. And Senator Khan and I and the other engineering senators got to witness his participation in some great sustainability initiatives firsthand just last night. So you two are both excellently qualified, and I'll call the question.
Second.
There's been a call to question on the nominees, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote. And there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the senators by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, congratulations. Moving on to general orders. Within general orders 2019-2-30Y, allowing for waiving of bylaws, and that's Senator Mass.
Yes. This bill pretty much says what the title says. As we've kind of discussed ad nauseum over the past 2 weeks now, after virtually never discussing it, our bylaws do not delineate a proper process for waiving bylaws, so we are basically allowing for that. This bill does limit the power of the Senate to waive bylaws to only those relating to Senate policy and procedures. We felt that was appropriate, as it would not be appropriate for the Senate to, say, waive a bylaw that says the court must protect the rights of people before it. The Senate should be in charge of its own rules, but not the rules of the other branches by being able to waive things willy-nilly like that. So yeah, this just delineates what exactly that motion looks like. And with that, I am willing to yield.
Speaker Culbertson.
Propose the Rules Committee amendments.
There's been a motion to move to approve.
Yeah.
Move to approve Rules Committee's amendments, and there's been a second. We move into discussion. There's been a call to question on the amendment. Is there a second? There's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote. And there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the amendments by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment stands approved. Speaker Culbertson.
Okay. So in Rules Committee, we discussed the fact that originally we had it as present senators, but we thought that in order to waive a bylaw, it should be a little bit of a higher threshold. So we said seated senators, which ups the number that would, like, the yes votes up by a little bit. So that's about it.
Do you? Senator Stanley.
First of all, Senator Mass, I'd like to ask if you would accept a friendly to strike the words from line 16 where it says Robert's Rules of Order do not allow for the waiving of bylaws, and to strike the words do not allow for the waiving of bylaws, comma, but, as it is factually inaccurate according to the 11th edition of Roberts.
If it's in a whereas clause, yes.
Okay, excellent. And I would like to ask, in the fourth enacted clause,
Can you name the line number?
34, where it's specifying that the motion to waive a bylaw will be in order when no other motion is pending. By no other motion, are you referring to a main motion or a subsidiary motion?
Are you asking Senator
I'm
Mass?
asking Senator Mass, yes.
Yeah, so this is boilerplate language taken from the other parts of the bylaws, such as tabling. It basically means that you can do it on like a main motion, but like you can't do it while, like, say, we're considering tabling or something else of that sort.
So it can be done on a main motion, but not a subsidiary motion.
Right, a subsidiary or incidental motion, I believe. So, like I said, this is boilerplate language taken from the other similar types of motions delineated in our bylaws next to it.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that that was in fact the case. So then that means that the motion to waive a bylaw can take the characteristic of a subsidiary incidental motion then.
That'd be correct, and I believe that is already delineated somewhere else in this. Yeah, I don't see it right now, but I believe it is stated what class of motion this is somewhere else within this, this bill. If it makes you more comfortable to clarify that.
Oh,
I
it does
think
actually, the
we
first
can
enacted
go
clause.
friendly amendment. So,
Wonderful. Thank you for clearing that up. I'll yield.
Vice Speaker Schrader.
Would Senator Mass accept a friendly to remove and voting at a meeting, as it contradicts with the Rules Committee amendment we made? And I think we missed that.
where's that at?
Enact the line 43 and 44, seated senators and voting at a meeting.
So you want to strike present and voting at a meeting?
We already struck present.
So you want to strike and voting at a meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. That I called a question.
There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote. Olacard. Bender. Blair. Khan. Crab. Corbetson. Dollinger. Fritz. Green. Hanyang. Heasley. Johnson. Class. Klein. Clifford. Ludwig. Mass. Meredith. Mitchell. Rice. Rinchi. Trader. Searles. Stanley. Toinette. Zastro. Advet. With a vote of 27 to 0 to 0, this bill passes. Moving on to new business. Within new business, we have 2019-2-24F, funding Walk, Bike, Drive Smart with Senator Stanley.
Title.
Move to consider as read.
Okay, this is the bill about Walk, Bike, Drive Smart. Senior Director Orger can answer any questions that you have, but I'll take questions of intent right now.
Questions of intent. Senator Mass.
Is it your intent to waive second read on this bill?
Yes, and I will do so presently.
There's been a motion to waive the second read on this bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections to waiving the second read on this bill? Seeing none, the second read has been waived. Senator Stanley.
I'll yield my time to Senior Director Orger.
Thanks, Senator Stanley. So Walk, Bike, Drive Smart is an event put on by the City of Ames. So I've been working with their community resource officer to put this event on. So basically, they hand out donuts on Lincoln Way in like Campus Town area to educate pedestrians that are crossing to press the button and cross safely and like wait for the walk sign. So they've done it the past few years. They were in need of assistance and funding, so we will be funding half of it for the $250. So 500 donuts, and we have a total of 1,000 donuts at the event. So, I guess any questions?
Senator Class.
We sent this favorably from Finance Committee because it's awesome.
Do you yield? Senator Toinette.
Where are the donuts from?
They're from Hy-Vee. I don't know, police department has a partnership with Hy-Vee, so they're already involved.
Gotcha. Are we talking just glazed or like special donuts here?
Just glazed.
Thank you. That's all.
Do you yield? Senator Fritz.
What time will this event be taking place?
Oh, yeah, sorry. So it's next Friday, October 18th. It starts at 9 a.m. and it will go until the donuts run out, so it usually is about an hour and a half, 2 hours. So in addition, we will need help staffing the event. They have departments within the City of Ames and then would also love students to be out there as well. So there is a sign up on the MIS if you all want to check it out.
Awesome, thank you.
Senator Toinette. There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote. Advet. Yes. Zastro. Yes. Toinette. Yes. Stanley. Yes. Searles. Yes. Strader. Yes. Rinchi. Yes. Rice. Yes. Mitchell. Yes. Meredith. Yes. Mass. Yes. Ludwig. Yes. Lifford. Yes. Klein. Yes. Class. Alucard. Bender. Blair. Khan. Crab. Colbertson. Dollinger. Fritz. Green. Hanyang. Heasley. Johnson. With a vote of 27 to 0 to 0, this funding request passes. Yes. No. Oh, my bad. Moving on to 2019-2-25F, Funding Sustainability Committee with Senator Searles. Senator Class.
Is it your intention to waive second read?
Yeah, I'll do that now.
There's been a motion to waive the second read on the bill. Is there a second? There's been a second. Are there any objections in waiving the second read to this bill? Seeing none, the second read has been waived. Senator Searles. There's been a motion to amend the bill and accept the changes suggested by the Finance Committee minutes. And there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into discussion. Senator Searles. Just want to make sure there's a discussion on the amendment.
Yeah, thanks. Call the question.
There's been a call to question, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into. There's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the amendment by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment stands approved. Senator Searles.
Thank you. I'm going to yield my time to Sustainability Director Wild.
Yeah, hi everyone. So this is just kind of funding for National Campus Sustainability Day. We're doing a tabling there. The event itself is put on by the Live Green team, but we're just doing some informational flyers and things like that to kind of promote student government and talk about what we're doing through Sustainability Committee and also get the word out about the Green Initiatives Fund. So yeah, it's on Friday the 18th from 10 to 2, so the same day as Rachel's event.
Senator Class.
Will Senator Searles accept it as a friendly to change craft supplies cost to 142.98 so that the totals of that line add up?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, I call the question.
There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, there's been an objection. Do you withdraw? Senator Ludwig. There's been a call to question again, and there's been a second. There's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote. Zastro. Yes. Tonet. Yes. Stanley. Yes. Searles. Yes. Schrader. Yes. Rinchi. Yes. Rice. Yes. Mitchell. Yes. Meredith. Yes. Advet. Yes. Alucard. Yes. Bender. Yes. Blair. Yes. Khan. Yes. Crab. Yes. Colbertson. Yes. Fritz. Yes. Green. Yes. Hanyang. Yes. Heasley. Yes. Johnson. Yes. Dollinger. Yes. Class. Yes. Klein. Yes. Lipford. Yes. Ludwig. Yes. Mass. Yes. With a vote of 27 to 0 to 0, this funding request passes. Moving on to 2019-2-26F, funding second AV technician for Senate stream with Senator Hanyang.
Title.
Questions of intent?
Yeah,
Seeing none?
so this just funds second AV Tech, yeah, for the mics.
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Moving on to 2019-2-27F, funding advertising for the mock caucus event with Senator Tonet.
Title. All right, so this bill is about funding the advertising for the mock caucus event that we have coming up next week. The people I was working with were taking a while to get the numbers to me, so that's why it is on such short notice.
Questions of intent? Senator Lifford.
Your intent to waive second read.
It is, I would like to do that.
There's been a motion to waive the second read on this bill. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a second. Are there any objections in waiving the second read onto this bill? Seeing none, the second read has been waived. Senator Toinette.
All right. So I would like to move to amend the bill to adopt the changes made during our impromptu finance committee meeting.
Would you,
Sorry.
If they're included.
They should be in the email with the Mueller
Senator
report.
Class, did the
Yeah.
amendments got,
They, in
were
the
they sent?
Mueller report. I can motion if you would
Yes.
rather. Okay, cool. I move to change the total of the mass email to, oh, there. Yeah, cool, great.
Are you amending the amendment? Is that what your intent is? Okay. Senator Toinette, you called the amendment. Is there a second to the amendment? There's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into discussion. There's been a call to question on the amendment, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the amendments by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment stands approved. Senator Toinette.
Yeah, so like I said before, this is going to be a really cool event. A lot of people, this is going to be their first primary, and a lot of people aren't from Iowa, so they really just don't know what's going on with the caucuses. So that was kind of the intent of this event, is to get the students involved in the caucus occasion, I guess, and give them some more information about what to expect. I yield.
Senator Class.
Does Senator Toinette accept a friendly to change the enacted line to reflect the title of the total? Sorry, not the title.
Yes.
Cool. With that, I call the question.
There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote. Advet. Yes. Olicard. Yes. Bender. Yes. Blair. Yes. Khan. Yes. Crab. Yes. Culbertson. Yes. Dollinger. Yes. Fritz. Yes. Green. Yes. Anyang. Yes. Heasley. Heasley. Yes. Johnson. Yes. Class. Yes. Klein. Yes. Lipford. Yes. Ludwig. Yes. Mass. Yes. Meredith. Yes. Mitchell. Yes. Rice. Yes. Rinchi. Yes. Schrader. Yes. Searles. Yes. Stanley. Yes. Samuel. Toinette. Yes. Zastro. Yes. With a vote of 27 to 0 to 0, this funding request passes. Moving on to 2019-2-28F, funding cardinal elites with Senator Lifford.
Title.
Vote to consider as read.
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Moving on to 2019-2-29F, funding Society of Automated Engineering with Senator Lifford.
Title. Same thing.
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Moving on to 2019-2-32Y, handling rules for senators swearing the oath of office. Senator Mass. Do you want to?
This fixes a loophole in our bylaws that currently we don't know how to handle senators if they've been elected but never swear the oath of office. That clarifies this and clarifies the procedure of exactly how those should be administered, which also is never actually talked about in our bylaws.
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Moving on to 2019-2-30F, funding womenhood design with Senator Class.
Title.
Move to consider as read.
Yeah, seeing it in Finance Committee next week.
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Closing announcements. Senator Heasley.
I was just gonna say, it's not fun for me when you guys don't try to challenge me for the move to consider as read. I mean, if I'm on my A game, you're not gonna win, but just, you know, it just makes it boring for me. I mean, Vish never gave up last year, so that's all I'm saying. That's all.
Senator Stanley.
I'd just like to say that a great way to beat Senator Heasley to it is if you yell it in his ear, which I did. It seems to be a very good method to put him off his game. Well, I know that the running joke is that I always tell you guys, or you all, I should say, sorry, to read Robert's rules every week. And now I would like to add something to my required reading list, please. I'd like you all to read the bylaws, please. Just read them once, and read Roberts as well. I think if everyone read the bylaws and Roberts and got a little more familiar with them, we could have avoided a lot of the confusion tonight. And I think if you read Roberts, I think you'll find that the general rule of thumb from Roberts is don't speak until you are spoken to, whether it's by the chair, whether it's by a senator yielding their time to you. There's a reason that points of order, inquiry, parliamentary inquiry information are used very rarely, and that's out of courtesy and respect to the person who has the floor. So I would urge you to not let things devolve into, in lieu of what I anticipate will be stronger language used later tonight, a regrettable situation like what we face today. And on a lighter note, if anybody would like to get ice cream after the meeting, so we can debrief a little bit, I would certainly be very open to that. That invitation is open to anyone, so please come talk to me if you want to do that. Thank you.
Senator Meredith.
I have a couple things. First, Carrie wanted me to remind everyone that if you're signed up to walk in the homecoming parade, she sent out an email with a waiver, and you have to fill that out and give it to her by, I think it's the 16th, but it says it in the email. Also, Coyote Corn Dogs is tomorrow from 7 to 10, so all the proceeds go to a scholarship that is given to a design student at Iowa State. So if you want to support that, you can come out. Also, I am a student admissions representative. I don't know if you don't know what that is. We give campus tours and residence hall tours to prospective students and their families, and the applications are open. So if you're interested in that, it's another good leadership opportunity. You can hit me up and I'll give you the details.
Senator Crabb.
Hi guys. So this is my favorite week in the whole wide world. It's Human Sciences Week. So if you guys didn't go to any of the events this week, that makes me sad. But tomorrow there's a community pizza meal with Cure DJ, and it's $5, and all of the donations go to UNICEF. We have the art walk, liquid nitrogen ice cream demo, and then also I think I'm gonna go to this tomorrow, so you guys should come. But it's a self-defense class at Forker at 7 p.m. So we can yeah, that'd be fun. Thank you. I'm good.
Senator Hanyan.
Hi, all. First of all, thanks for the discussion tonight. Definitely made me second guess myself and triple guess myself at times. I would just say that with everything that was kind of brought up, that definitely that we kind of pay attention to setting criteria, like that sort of thing. I definitely had my own regrets during that bill that we talked about. But I'd also say that we should also work to be proactive instead of retroactively kind of kicking ourselves at the same time. While it's good to be looking back at our past decisions and saying, I really wish that this would be this way or this would be another way, you can also take what we have right now and move forward in having alternatives. I know that Vice Speaker Schrader came up with a very great alternative. Who was the one that, I think it was Senator Klass who came up with the thing about co-sponsoring. I thought that was another great alternative to the Sparkle Squad bill. Something that Morgan Fritz and I talked to the group about afterwards was potentially having the group come in contact with athletics and seeing if we could have them talk to somebody even as important as Jamie Pollard and seeing if we can fund their uniforms through there. So if you have any interest about that, that's something that I really want to go ahead with in the future. Also, this weekend on Sunday, the 13th at 3 p.m. in Stevens Auditorium, the Collage of Choirs concert is happening. That's a showcase of all the university choirs here at Iowa State. I know that I'll be a part of that as Iowa State singers. Senator Rice will be in it as part of Statesmen, as well as a lot of other great musicians here at Iowa State. And it's just a great way to go out and support the arts here at our university because they're awesome. So That's all.
Senator Zastro.
Howdy, howdy, y'all. Great debate tonight. Really appreciate it. I appreciate that we are keeping ourselves and each other courteous. Small plug for an organization I'm not involved in. AO Pi has a 5K this Sunday morning that I'll be running. If you want to race me, be there, or be square. I yield.
Senator Searles.
Okay, got a couple points. So it's not really been thrown out there yet, but I'm working on a few projects of varying topics, and I'm realizing that they're a little bit over my head. So that MIS document that we have that has our list of projects that you can sign up to help people out, I'm going to be throwing some of those projects up there. I would greatly appreciate some help. A lot of them have to do with, you probably have already known this, Native American student representation, student accommodations, and there's a few others, but I'll put some of them up there. So maybe just take a look at that, and get some help. And then final, next point, echoing partially what Senator Stanley had said about Robert's rules, it is something that we do govern our body by during meetings. However, not to negate the point, but to add on to that, I'd like to remind us that the point of Robert's rules is to increase the efficiency of these meetings, but the point of being a senator is to represent our students both in these meetings and outside. I do obviously think Robert's rules is important. I do not think it is the most important thing here. I think we should be keeping in mind there will be slip-ups with Robert's rules, but intent and impact are two different things. We're intending to be efficient, but if the impact is that we're having a decent impact on the student body, that's the reason we're here. So taking that out, and obviously we have different committees to keep that in mind. Going outside of these meetings once a week, we're still senators, we're still representing people, we still go to our constituencies, we're still advocating for them. So if we're not focused on that, and we're just focused on when do I make this point of order, when do I ask this question, we're totally missing the point of the reason we're actually elected to be here. So efficiency and efficacy are two different things. So let's focus on why we're here in the first place. We can do it efficiently and effectively, but we're here not to be efficient, but to make an impact. So I'll yield.
Senator Toinette.
Hello, everyone. So I have some more primary updates for you all. I kind of like giving those. So tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. on CNN, there will be an LGBTQ town hall with 9 Democratic candidates. That'll be going until 11 o'clock Central. So that'll be definitely something you should tune into. And then next Tuesday, October 15th at 7 p.m. Central is the next Democratic debate. So there will be 12 candidates there. That'll also be really interesting, so definitely keep an eye out for that.
Chief of Staff Kuzel.
Hello. 3 points. Echo what Senator Meredith said about STARS. Join. It's fun. That's all I got for that. Second of all, leadership breakout. So we have another one because those happen every week. So this one, last week we talked about brainstorming and like how to get like a collective vision. And then this week we're gonna kind of talk about like how to communicate that vision. And so what we put into like why statements or elevator pitches or anything surrounded by that area, but that's what we're gonna be kind of talking about. So not just like what we're doing here, but why we do it and how to communicate that better. So see you all on Thursday at 5. Hopefully it'll be super fun. Third of all, and this is just more of an overall statement, not just for Senate, but for student government in general. I was kind of like sitting in the corner when I first got here, mainly because I was eating cheese balls. But I was just like sitting down, and it's kind of interesting to like what I hear instead of like actually seeing things. I was like really like paying attention to like the things that were being said. And I just want to caution everyone a little bit of like, we had some really good debate, but there was also a lot of petty, I guess, comments that were just a little uneasy, which I know happens when we're in a tense debate. It's easier to say that than like actually do it. But just caution us into like not using those type of phrases, even if it comes off like that. Just because that can, not saying it's creating a problem now, but that just tends to create divides in things, and I would hate to see that happen. And I know that we all don't want that to happen either, but that's just the thing that I noticed, and I just want to caution us all on using, just like maybe like I don't want to use the word petty, but like that's like just like language like that and like maybe ats that we don't necessarily mean to, and just being careful with our words, especially when we have other student organizations in the room and we're being live streamed so anyone can come and watch us. But those are all my things. If you have any questions about any of them, let me know.
Senior Director of Origer.
So again, please sign up on the MIS for the Walk, Bike, Drive Smart next Friday. And then also for all you golfers out there, Engineers Week is having their golf tournament this Sunday at Vinker Golf Course in Ames. So you can find it on our website, Engineers Week at Iowa State.
Advisor Crum.
I just wanted to take a second and thank you for recognizing some of the legal ramifications beyond this chamber that could have come or happened because of the decisions you were making tonight. I think it's good to recognize occasionally that you can put the university in hot water by the things that you do here, because you do have power and you do speak on behalf of the university. And so thank you for recognizing that. Thank you for bringing that up and seeing that and getting ahead of it. I encourage you to keep that mindset in the back of your mind as you move forward throughout the rest of everything else that you're going to be doing this year. Because the last thing that I want to do on Thursday morning is be in legal counsel's office. So thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
A couple of comments from my side. One thing that I noticed, it's kind of a little thing, but just kind of refrain from using guys as a term. When y'all say that, it's better to move towards more inclusive terms like y'all, everyone. Just because there's various identities that are present in the room that do not identify as males. So just want to caution everyone for that. And secondly, just kind of echoing what Senator Stanley said, is out of respect, it'd be helpful for me as well to not speak in the middle when someone, not just senators within senators. I'd suggest you maybe wait till the center ends to kind of bring your point up and maybe bring it in a solid way, not just yelling from one corner of the room. Because something that I would tell you personally is yelling will not help from one end of the corner. I would not be like, oh, this person yells, so I'm going to pick them. So just want to caution that so that we are a big family, and in the big family, we respect each other. So just want to make that point forward. If you have any questions or concerns about that, you can always come talk to me. I can answer more questions if y'all have those questions. But with that, Vice Speaker Schrader.
Yeah, maybe a middle ground is control F-ing your position in the bylaws. I don't know. If you have a leadership position, maybe do that instead of reading the whole 50-page document. But beyond that, I think as far as how many different viewpoints we had in the room, debate went all right. It certainly wasn't awful. Respecting each other has been said several times before. So I think everything else I said was going to be said already. Besides, I'd like to thank Senator Tonette for the mock caucus and organizing that. I was in the first meetings that kind of said it, and then I ditched it when he became civic engagement chair, and he managed to keep on keeping on. So I appreciate that. And with that, I yield.
So just I don't know if President Graber mentioned, but tomorrow we'll be, at the Special Students Fees Committee, we'll be seeing IT services as well as Iowa State Daily. So if you have any comments regarding that, that's something that was a point brought up by Speaker Schrader, is something if we're going to move forward is maybe talk to you about the agenda that we're going to be seeing, so that at least we can get the voice up to the administration of what y'all believe. So just because we represent you all up there, and we voice your concerns, not just ours. So make sure if you have any comments, it's positive, negative, neutral, we'll take that. But yeah, with that, Madam Speaker.
Okay. Hi, everyone. If you have not responded to Raya's email yet, I would highly recommend that you do that. We are going to go to Reman Gardens on October 19th and walk through all like the pumpkins that got carved out and stuff like that. They have like over 1,000 of them apparently, which is insane, and it's gonna be really, really fun. That's kind of our alternative to the pumpkin patch because that was way too expensive, but this is gonna be super fun. She sent out a a really cute like Canva invite, but then also a calendar invite so you can respond like yes or no to that. So I'd highly encourage you to come. It's going to be super awesome and super fun. My next two questions were going to involve straw polls, but Vice Speaker Schrader has held steadfast to his no straw polls rule. So I'm just gonna say them out loud, and if you want to come talk to me afterwards, that'd be great. One of you came in and told me the Big 12 ideas that we presented last week that you were interested in, and I forgot to write down who it was. I wrote down the ideas that you were interested in, but forgot to write down your name. So if you want to come find me afterwards, that'd be really great. And then also, as far as Sparkle Squad, I know that we had said we'd keep them updated on when we brought the bill back up or when we were intending to. But if anyone's planning on kind of keeping them in touch and like letting them know like step by step kind of where we're at, just like let them know what's going on, just so they're not completely in the dark until we say like, hey, we're bringing it back up, just so they have an idea of what's going on. That'd be great. And then Tony, can I talk to you after this? You're not in trouble. Don't go, ooh, bitches, I need to talk to you. And then lastly, please take care of yourselves. As you know, a good number of our, I'll say family members are sick. So please take care of yourselves, drink water, get sleep, juice, chicken noodle soup, whatever you need to do. Just make sure you're taking care of yourselves because I know this is busy and the weather is weird. So just be careful about that, okay? And go Cyclones. And move to adjourn.
Objections?